My name is Maria Griffin, and I never thought I would see the day my daughter-in-law, Lauren, would throw my late husband's photographs into the trash like they were nothing but old paper. Thomas had been gone for 3 years, but those pictures were still breathing pieces of my life. I found them in the garbage after midnight, bent stained and buried beneath kitchen scraps. I did not scream. I did not wake the house. I only picked them up one by one, wiped them clean with trembling hands, and made one quiet phone call. By morning, Lauren would learn exactly whose home she had tried to erase my husband from. If this story has already touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe so you can stay with me until the end. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if someone threw away the last memories of the person you loved most? Also let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I truly love reading your thoughts. Thomas Griffin built our home before he ever called it ours. That was what I used to tell people when they complimented the white porch railing, the little flower boxes beneath the front windows, or the maple tree that stood proudly in the middle of the yard. They would say, "Maria, you have such a beautiful home," and I would smile because I knew beauty was only half the truth. That house had Thomas's hands in every corner. He was a carpenter by trade, though he always said he was just a man who knew how to fix what was broken. He had broad shoulders, rough palms, and a laugh that could fill a room before he even stepped inside it. When we first married, we had almost nothing. I worked at the public library in our small Ohio town, shelving books, helping children find stories, and stamping due dates on the little cards people used back then. Thomas worked long hours, building cabinets, repairing staircases, and taking whatever extra jobs he could find. We did not buy our home because we were rich. We bought it because we were stubborn. The house was old when we found it. The paint was peeling, the kitchen floor sagged near the sink, and the upstairs bathroom made a terrible groaning sound every time someone turned on the faucet. The realtor tried to apologize for all of it, but Thomas just stood in the doorway, looking around with that quiet expression he got whenever his mind was already measuring boards and imagining walls. Then he turned to me and said, "Maria, this place just needs someone to love it." That was Thomas. He believed almost anything could be saved if someone loved it properly. So we bought it. For years, we fixed that house one paycheck at a time. Thomas replaced the porch steps himself. I painted the kitchen cabinets pale yellow because I wanted the room to feel sunny even in winter. He built the bookshelves in the living room after I complained that our novels were stacked in boxes like forgotten relatives. He made them from oak sanding each shelf until it felt smooth as silk beneath my fingers. When our son Daniel was born, Thomas carved his initials underneath the bottom stair. DG Daniel Griffin. He said one day he'll run up and down these stairs so much the house ought to know his name. And Daniel did. He ran through that hallway with toy trucks in his hands. He built forts with couch cushions. He spilled grape juice on the rug and cried harder than I did because he thought he had ruined something precious. Thomas only knelt beside him, wiped the stain, and said, "People matter more than rugs, son." That was the kind of father he was. Patient, steady, gentle in a way that made other men trust him and children adore him. The photographs Lauren threw away were not decorations to me. They were proof that those years had been real. There was one of Thomas holding Daniel as a newborn, his face full of terror and wonder, as if someone had handed him the whole world wrapped in a blue blanket. There was one of us on our 25th wedding anniversary, standing under the maple tree Thomas planted the spring after we moved in. There was one of him in the garage, covered in sawdust, grinning beside the rocking chair he made for me when my knees started aching. And then there was our wedding photograph, Thomas in a navy suit that did not quite fit right. Me in a simple lace dress my mother helped me alter at the kitchen table. We were young, nervous and poor, but when I looked at that picture, I could still feel his hand around mine. I could still hear him whisper, "Whatever comes, we face it together." For 42 years, we did. We faced bills, sickness arguments, disappointments, and the slow heartbreak of watching our only child grow into a man who no longer needed us the way he once had. We faced Thomas's cancer together too, though I will admit there were nights when I thought facing it might break me. He got sick quietly. That was the cruelest part. At first, it was fatigue, then weight loss, then doctor visits that turned into scans that turned into hushed conversations, and hushed conversations that turned into words no wife ever wants to hear. Stage 4. Thomas took the news with the same calm dignity he had carried through life. I did not. I cried in the hospital parking lot until I could barely breathe. He sat beside me, one hand on my back, and said, "Maria, don't spend the time we have left mourning me while I'm still here." So I tried not to. We spent his final months in that house. He sat in his chair, by the window, the one he had built with his own hands, watching the maple leaves change from green to gold. Daniel visited when he could, though his job kept him busy. Back then, I believed busy was the only reason he stayed away. I did not know how much distance could grow inside a family while everyone still pretended they were close. Thomas died on a rainy Thursday morning. The house felt different after that. Not empty exactly, but listening, as if every room was waiting for his footsteps and did not understand why they never came. For months, I left his work jacket hanging by the back door. I kept his coffee mug in the cabinet where he liked it. I kept his photographs in the living room because sometimes when grief was too heavy, I needed to look at his face and remember that love had not disappeared just because his body had. Daniel worried about me then. He came by on Sundays. He fixed little things badly, bless his heart, because he had inherited his father's kindness, but not his talent with tools. He would tighten a loose hinge and somehow make the door squeak worse. We would laugh, and for a while, I thought we would be all right. Then he met Lauren. At first, I wanted to love her. I truly did. Daniel brought her over one evening in early spring. She was polished, pretty, and confident, with a bright smile and a way of speaking that made every sentence sound rehearsed. She complimented the house. She complimented my cooking. She stood in front of Thomas's wedding photo and said, "You two looked so sweet together." I remember feeling grateful for that. Maybe too grateful. When you are a widow, kindness toward your memories feels like kindness toward your heart. I mistook Lauren's politeness for tenderness. I mistook her attention for respect. Daniel seemed happy with her, and that mattered to me. After losing Thomas, I wanted my son to have someone. I wanted laughter in his life. I wanted holidays with warmth instead of empty chairs and quiet plates. So when Daniel asked if he and Lauren could stay with me for a little while after their wedding, I said yes before he even finished explaining. "It'll just be temporary, Mom," he said. "We want to save money for our own place." Lauren touched my hand across the table and added, "We don't want to impose Maria, really. We'll help with everything." I believed her. I told them the house had room. I told them family helped family. I told myself Thomas would have wanted our son under our roof if he needed us. For the first few weeks, it almost felt nice. Lauren bought fresh flowers for the kitchen. Daniel mowed the lawn. Their little daughter Emma filled the house with the sound of cartoons and questions. She was 6 then, all bright eyes and soft curls, and she loved sitting beside me while I told her stories about the grandfather she barely remembered. "Did Grandpa Thomas build this?" she would ask, touching the bookshelf. "Yes, sweetheart," I would say. "Did he build the porch?" "Yes." "Did he build you?" I laughed so hard the first time she asked that I had tears in my eyes. "No, baby." But he helped make me stronger. Those moments kept me going. But slowly, quietly, the air in my home began to change. Lauren stopped asking before moving things. A vase would disappear from the mantel. A quilt Thomas's mother made would be folded away in a closet. The framed photograph of Thomas in his workshop moved from the living room shelf to the hallway table, then from the hallway table to a box in the spare room. Each time, Lauren had a reason. It looked cluttered. It didn't match the room. I thought it might be painful for you to see it every day. That last one was the cleverest, because it made her sound concerned while doing exactly what she wanted. Daniel would glance at me with tired eyes and say, "Mom, Lauren is just trying to make the house feel fresh." Fresh. As if my life with Thomas had gone stale. I tried to be patient. I told myself every young wife wanted to make a home feel like her own. I told myself I was being sensitive because grief had made me protective. I told myself Thomas would want peace more than pride. But deep down, I felt something tightening. Because Lauren was not simply changing curtains or moving furniture. She was removing evidence. Evidence that Thomas had lived there. Evidence that I had loved him. Evidence that this house had a history before she walked through the front door with her perfect smile and quiet plans. What Lauren did not know, what Daniel seemed to have forgotten, was that Thomas had made one final decision before he died. He had called Robert Hayes, our family attorney, and made sure the house belonged to me alone. Not Daniel. Not any future spouse. Not anyone who thought grief made an old woman weak. Thomas had looked at me from his hospital bed, his hand thin but still warm around mine, and said, "Maria, promise me you'll never let anyone push you out of the home we built." At the time, I thought he meant loneliness. I did not know he was warning me about family. Maria Griffin did not enter my family like a storm. She entered like sunlight. That was what made it so hard to see the shadow behind her. The first time Daniel brought her to dinner, she arrived with a bouquet of white lilies and a bottle of sparkling cider, because Daniel had told her I did not drink wine. I remember thinking that was thoughtful. She wore a cream-colored sweater, pearl earrings, and the kind of smile that made a person feel chosen. She hugged me gently, not too close, not too stiff, and said, "Maria, Daniel has told me so much about you." Not Mrs. Griffin. Not Daniel's mother. Maria. At the time, I thought it sounded warm. She walked through my house, slowly admiring the woodwork, the bookshelves, the porch Thomas had repaired. She asked questions about the maple tree in the front yard and laughed softly when I told her Thomas had planted it because he wanted something that would outlive his stubbornness. "He sounds like he was a wonderful man," Lauren said, looking at his photograph. Was. That little word touched me, but I ignored the sting. People never know how to speak about the dead. They either avoid them completely or place them too neatly in the past, as if love ends when a heartbeat does. Daniel watched Lauren that evening with pride in his eyes. He kept reaching for her hand under the table. He laughed more than I had heard him laugh in months. And because I was his mother, because I had prayed so many lonely nights for my son to find happiness, I decided to trust what made him smile. Lauren was a marketing consultant for a real estate development firm in Columbus. She knew how to speak to people, how to make an idea sound elegant, how to turn a plain sentence into something polished. Daniel worked as an operations manager for a regional hardware supplier, steady and practical like his father, though not nearly as handy. They seemed balanced. He was quiet, she was confident. He was cautious, she was ambitious. He avoided conflict. She stepped directly into it with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. I did not see that last part right away. After they married, Daniel called me one Sunday afternoon. His voice had that careful tone grown children use when they want something, but hope you will offer before they ask. "Mom," he said, "Lauren and I have been talking." I sat at the kitchen table, with a cup of tea cooling in front of me. About what? Saving money. Getting ahead. Rent is ridiculous right now, and with Emma starting school soon, we thought maybe... He paused. Maybe we could stay with you for a little while. I looked around the kitchen. The yellow cabinets Thomas and I had painted together were chipped near the handles. His old coffee mug still sat on the second shelf. The house had been too quiet for too long. How long is a little while? I asked. 6 months, Daniel said quickly. Maybe 9. Just until we can put together a down payment. Then Lauren's voice came through faintly in the background. Tell her we'll help with bills. Daniel repeated it. Lauren says we'll help with bills. Groceries, utilities, whatever you need. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why 2 working adults with decent incomes had no savings. I should have heard the pressure beneath Daniel's politeness, but all I heard was my son needing me. So I said yes. They moved in 3 weeks later with boxes, suitcases, Emma's stuffed animals, and more furniture than I expected for a temporary stay. Lauren directed the movers like she had lived there for years. Put that against the living room wall. No, not there. That corner gets better light. Daniel, ask your mom if we can move this table. She said, ask your mom, but she rarely waited for the answer. At first, I tried to be gracious. I cleared space in the hall closet. I gave them the larger upstairs bedroom because it had better morning light. I moved my sewing basket from the den so Emma could use the room for her toys. Lauren thanked me often in those early days. You're so generous, Maria. This is such a blessing. We don't know what we'd do without you. Those words warmed me. A widow can live on small kindnesses for a long time. Emma made the house feel alive again. She left crayons on the coffee table and little sneakers by the door. She asked if the maple tree was magic because its leaves turned red before the others on the street. At night, I could hear Daniel reading to her, his voice low and gentle, and sometimes I would close my eyes and remember Thomas reading to Daniel in that same upstairs room. For a while, I convinced myself this was what healing looked like. Then Lauren began making suggestions. Small ones, harmless ones. Maria, have you ever thought about replacing these curtains? They make the room look darker than it is. Maria, this rug is beautiful, but it's a little old-fashioned, don't you think, Maria? Do you really use all these dishes? Minimalism is so much easier at your age. At your age. She said it sweetly, always with a smile, always as if she were helping me step into a better version of my own life. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found my living room rearranged. Thomas's chair had been moved away from the window and pushed into the corner near the hallway. A sleek gray armchair Lauren had brought from storage sat in its place. I stood there holding a paper bag of apples, staring at the empty space where my husband's chair had always been. Lauren came in from the dining room, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, good you're back," she said. "I hope you don't mind. The room flows so much better this way." I looked at Thomas's chair. The cushions still had the slight dip from years of his body resting there. That chair was by the window because Thomas liked to watch the maple tree. Lauren's smile did not disappear, but it cooled. I understand. But Maria Thomas isn't sitting there anymore. The apples nearly slipped from my hands. Daniel, who had been carrying a box through the hallway, froze. For 1 second, I thought he would say something. I thought he would look at his wife and tell her that some things deserved gentleness. Instead, he lowered his eyes and said, "Mom, maybe just try it for a few days." That was the first time I felt like a guest in my own home. Not because a chair had moved, because my son had. After that, Lauren became bolder. She labeled shelves in the pantry. She replaced my floral kitchen towels with plain white ones. She bought matching storage bins and put my old recipe cards in a box marked miscellaneous. My grandmother wrote some of those, I told her. Oh, I didn't throw them away, Lauren said. I just organized them, but there is a kind of organizing that feels like erasing. She began calling the house our place when speaking to friends on the phone. You should come by our place sometime. We're updating our living room. Our backyard is perfect for summer. Each time I heard it, I told myself not to be petty. They were living there. Maybe it was natural. Maybe I was too sensitive. Then one evening, while Emma was coloring at the kitchen table, Lauren opened a drawer near the sink and pulled out a folder. What's this? She asked. I looked over. House papers, insurance taxes repairs, things like that. Her eyes brightened for half a second before she softened her face. Oh, you keep all that here for convenience? Smart. She flipped the folder open without asking. Is the mortgage paid off? I reached across the counter and gently closed it. Yes. Lauren looked at my hand on the folder, then at me. That must be such a relief. It is. And Thomas handled all that before he passed Thomas, and I handled it together. Something flickered across her face. Annoyance, maybe? Or calculation? Daniel walked in before she could say more, and Lauren slid easily into another subject, asking him about dinner, smiling as if she had not just been searching through documents that did not belong to her. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. The house creaked around me in familiar ways. The pipes clicked. The wind brushed against the upstairs window. Somewhere down the hall, Emma murmured in her sleep. I thought about Lauren's questions, the mortgage, the insurance, the papers. I thought about Thomas in his hospital bed, his voice thin but firm. Promise me you'll never let anyone push you out of the home we built. At the time, I had squeezed his hand and promised because I thought he needed peace. Now for the first time, I wondered if he had seen something in Daniel that I had refused to see. Not cruelty. Daniel was not cruel. But weakness can become a doorway for cruel people. The next morning, Lauren came downstairs with a cup of coffee and a bright smile. I was thinking, she said, leaning against the counter, this house has so much potential. With the right updates, it could be worth a fortune. I looked at her carefully. A fortune? She laughed lightly. Well, not a fortune, but you know what I mean. The neighborhood is changing. Young families love older homes with character. This home already has character. Of course, she said quickly. I just mean, someday, if you ever wanted to downsize Daniel, and I could help you make smart choices. There it was. Downsize. A soft word for being moved out of the life I had built. I took my time stirring sugar into my tea. I'm not planning to leave my home, Lauren. For the first time since I had known her, she did not answer right away. Then she smiled. But it was not sunlight anymore. It was a locked door. The first photograph disappeared on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were the days I volunteered at the library's children's reading hour. I had been doing it since retiring, partly because I loved books, and partly because the library was one of the few places where no one treated grief like an inconvenience. That afternoon, I came home carrying a canvas bag full of returned novels and a small container of chicken soup my friend Susan Whitaker had insisted I take. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No cartoons from the den, no Emma humming to herself, no Lauren speaking on the phone in that polished voice she used when she wanted to sound important. I stepped into the living room and stopped. The photograph of Thomas in his workshop was gone. It had always sat on the oak bookshelf he built for me. In the picture, he was wearing his old flannel shirt sleeves, rolled up sawdust in his hair, smiling like the whole world was a joke, only he understood. I used to look at that picture whenever the house felt too empty. Now there was a white ceramic vase in its place. I stood there for several seconds, soup container in one hand, library bag in the other, waiting for my mind to make sense of what my eyes were seeing. "Lauren," I called. She came from the kitchen with a dish towel over her shoulder. "Oh, you're home. Where is Thomas's picture?" Her face remained calm. That was one of Lauren's talents. She could make any offense look like a misunderstanding. "I moved a few things around," she said. The shelf looked crowded. It wasn't crowded. Well, maybe not to you. She gave a small laugh. But visually, it was a little heavy. I put the photo in the hallway. I walked to the hallway. It was not there. Lauren followed me, her footsteps soft against the floor. Maybe the entry table. I was trying different spots. The entry table held a bowl for keys, a candle, and a stack of mail. "No, Thomas." I turned back to her. "Where is it, Lauren?" For the first time, irritation crossed her face. "Maria, I didn't throw it away. It's probably in one of the boxes in the den." One of the boxes. The words made my chest tighten. I went to the den and found 3 cardboard boxes stacked near the closet. Inside the first were old magazines, 2 framed cross stitches, and the quilt Thomas's mother had made for our wedding. Inside the second were my recipe cards, a ceramic angel Daniel had painted in 3rd grade, and a handful of family photographs wrapped in newspaper. Thomas's workshop picture was in the 3rd box face down. I picked it up carefully, brushing dust from the glass. Behind me, Lauren sighed. "I was going to organize those later. These are not clutter." "I didn't say they were clutter. You put them in a box. Because the house needs breathing room." Her voice sharpened, then softened again when she saw Daniel coming down the stairs. "I'm just trying to help." Daniel looked from Lauren to me, then to the photograph in my hands. "What happened?" he asked. "Your father's picture was boxed up," I said. He rubbed the back of his neck, already tired of the conversation before it had begun. "Mom." That single word told me where he was standing. Not beside me. Somewhere in the middle, which meant nowhere at all. "Daniel," I said quietly, "this is your father. I know that." "Then why are you looking at me like I'm being difficult?" His face tightened. "No one said that." Lauren folded her arms. "I'm not trying to erase anyone, but we can't live in a museum forever." "A museum?" The word landed like a slap. I looked around the room Thomas and I had filled over 40 years. The bookshelf he built. The lamp we bought at a yard sale when Daniel was 10. The old clock Thomas repaired 3 times because I loved its chime. To Lauren, it was a museum. To me, it was evidence of a life built slowly, faithfully, with love. Daniel stepped closer. "Mom, Lauren is just trying to make the place feel fresh." Fresh. There was that word again. I wanted to ask him when his father had become stale to him. I wanted to ask if he remembered Thomas teaching him to ride a bike in the driveway, Thomas staying up all night when he had the flu, Thomas working overtime to pay for his college textbooks. But I did not ask. Some questions are too painful when you already know the answer. After that day, the changes came faster. Lauren removed the framed family photo from the mantel because, according to her, the frame was outdated. She replaced it with a round mirror that reflected the room, but remembered nothing. She took down the small wooden cross Thomas had carved after his first cancer treatment and put it in a drawer. She moved his old work jacket from the hook by the back door to a plastic storage bin in the garage. When I objected, she always had a reason. It was collecting dust. It made the space feel sad. "I thought it might help you heal." That was the cruelest part. She dressed every wound as medicine. One Saturday morning, I found her in the garage with Daniel standing beside Thomas's workbench. The workbench still held his old measuring tape jars of nails and the pencil marks he had made along the edge over the years. I had not touched it since he died. Not because I worshipped it, as Lauren would later say, but because some places become sacred after loss. Lauren held a clipboard. Daniel looked uncomfortable. "What are you doing?" I asked. Lauren turned quickly. "Just seeing what can be cleared out." "Cleared out?" "This garage has so much unused space, Maria. We could make it functional." "It is functional." She glanced at the workbench. "For whom?" The question was so cold, so casually cruel, that I could not answer at first. Daniel stepped in. "Mom, we were just talking. Maybe we could donate some tools. Your father's tools." "I don't use them," Daniel said. "But they were his." Lauren exhaled. "Maria, with respect, keeping every object Thomas ever touched is not healthy. With respect. People often say that right before they show none." I walked to the workbench and placed my hand on the worn wood. "This stays." Lauren's jaw tightened. "Fine." But the way she said it told me nothing was fine. That evening, I noticed Daniel avoiding my eyes at dinner. Emma chattered about school, showing me a drawing she had made of our house with a big red tree in front. She had drawn 4 people standing beside it herself, Daniel, Lauren, and me. Then she added a small figure in the sky. "Who is that sweetheart?" I asked. "Grandpa Thomas," Emma said proudly. "He's watching the house." Lauren's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Daniel looked down at his plate. I smiled at Emma, though my throat ached. "That's beautiful." Lauren set her fork down. "Emma, we talked about this." Emma's smile faded. "About what? About focusing on people who are here." The room went still. I looked at Daniel, waiting. Again, he said nothing. Emma lowered her crayon. "But Grandma says Grandpa helped build the house." Lauren's voice became tight. "Grandma talks about Grandpa a lot." I placed my napkin beside my plate. "Because he was part of this family." "No one is denying that," Lauren said. "But there's a difference between remembering someone and keeping everyone trapped in the past." I felt heat rise in my face, but I kept my voice steady. "Emma is allowed to know her grandfather. She barely remembers him. Then we remember him for her." Lauren smiled, but her eyes were hard. "Or maybe we let her form memories that aren't centered around grief." Daniel finally spoke. "Can we not do this at dinner?" I looked at my son. "Do what?" He swallowed. "Argue." I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because Daniel thought silence was peace. He always had. Even as a boy, he hated raised voices, hated tension, hated choosing sides. But refusing to choose is still a choice when someone is being hurt. Later that night, after Emma went to bed, I went downstairs for water and heard Lauren's voice from the living room. She was on the phone. "No, she hasn't agreed yet," Lauren said softly. "But the house is in a great area. Older, yes, but with updates it could sell beautifully." I froze near the kitchen doorway. A pause. Then Lauren laughed under her breath. "Daniel is working on her. She's sentimental, that's all. Once she realizes it's too much house for one old woman, everything will be easier." One old woman. My hand tightened around the glass. I heard papers rustling. "Yes," Lauren continued. "I'd like to get a rough estimate. Nothing official yet, just enough to know what we're dealing with." I backed away before she could see me. In the hallway, I found Daniel standing near the stairs. He had heard. I knew by his face. "Daniel?" I whispered, "What is she doing?" He looked toward the living room, then back at me. "Mom, don't overreact." That was when something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not completely, just enough for me to understand that my son knew more than he had admitted. "You knew she was talking to a realtor." He closed his eyes briefly. "It's just information. It's my home." "I know." "Do you?" He did not answer. From the living room, Lauren's voice floated through the house, calm and confident already, imagining a sale sign in my yard, already measuring my life in market value. I walked upstairs without another word. That night, I took Thomas's workshop photograph from the box and placed it back on the bookshelf. Then I stood in the dark living room and looked at his face. "I'm trying, Tom," I whispered, "but they're making it hard." Outside, the maple tree moved gently in the wind, its branches brushing the window like fingers. And for the first time since Thomas died, my home no longer felt like it was listening. It felt like it was warning me. The dinner that broke something in me began with Thomas's favorite meal. Pot roast with carrots, mashed potatoes with too much butter, green beans cooked the way he liked them, and apple pie cooling on the counter. I had not planned it as a statement. At least, that was what I told myself while I stood in the kitchen tying my apron. But grief has its own calendar. That day would have been Thomas's 71st birthday. I did not announce it. I did not expect a party, candles, or speeches. I only wanted to cook the meal he loved and sit at the table where he had once bowed his head before dinner, his hand finding mine beneath the edge of the tablecloth. Emma came into the kitchen first. "Grandma, it smells so good," she said, climbing onto a chair. I smiled. "Your grandpa loved this meal." Her eyes brightened. "Grandpa Thomas." "Yes, sweetheart. Did he eat a lot?" I laughed softly. More than he admitted. Emma giggled, and for a moment the kitchen felt warm again. Then Lauren walked in. She looked at the pot roast, then at me, then at Emma. Her smile was small and tight. "Oh," she said. "We're doing this tonight." I wiped my hands on a towel. Doing what Lauren opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of sparkling water. "Nothing. I just didn't realize dinner had a theme." "It doesn't have a theme," I said. "It's just dinner." But she knew. Somehow, she knew. Daniel came home 20 minutes later, tired from work, loosening his tie as he stepped through the back door. He kissed Emma on the head, kissed Lauren on the cheek, and gave me a quick hug. "Smells like Dad's birthday dinner," he said. For 1 second, I saw my son again. Not Lauren's husband. Not the man avoiding my eyes. My son. The boy who used to sneak carrots from the roasting pan and ask his father if birthdays meant extra pie. "Yes," I said quietly. "I suppose it does." Daniel's face softened. I forgot what day it was. Lauren set plates on the table a little harder than necessary. "Well, we've all been busy." No one answered. We sat down at 6:30. The sun was low outside, spilling orange light across the dining room floor. Emma sat beside me, swinging her feet. Daniel sat across from me. Lauren sat at the end of the table, where Thomas used to sit. I noticed it immediately. I tried not to. That chair had not belonged to Thomas in any legal sense. It was wood and cushion, nothing more. But after 42 years of marriage, some places hold a person's shape even after they are gone. Lauren unfolded her napkin and smiled. "This looks lovely, Maria." "Thank you." Daniel served Emma first, then Lauren, then himself. I watched his hands. They looked like Thomas's hands, though softer, less scarred. That hurt me in a way I could not explain. For a few minutes, dinner was peaceful. Emma told us about a spelling test. Daniel asked her what words she had learned. Lauren corrected her posture twice. I poured gravy over my potatoes and listened. Then Emma pointed her fork toward the empty wall beside the china cabinet. "Grandma wasn't there, a picture there before." My heart tightened. Lauren's eyes lifted slowly. "Yes," I said. "There was." "Was it Grandpa Thomas?" "Yes." "Where did it go?" Lauren took a sip of water. "It was moved, Emma." "Why?" "Because not every wall needs a dead person on it." The table went silent. Daniel's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Emma looked confused first, then hurt. I felt the blood drain from my face, but my voice came out steady. Lauren. She looked at me as if I were the one being inappropriate. What, that was cruel? No, Maria. Cruel is keeping a child surrounded by grief she doesn't even understand. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I understand Grandpa was Grandma's husband. Lauren turned to her sharply. Emma, don't talk back. She wasn't talking back, I said. She was telling the truth. Daniel sighed. Can we please not do this tonight? I looked at him. Tonight is exactly why this matters. Lauren set down her glass. There it is. I knew this was about Thomas. It is his birthday. And he is gone, Lauren said. The words struck the room like thunder. Emma flinched. Daniel closed his eyes. I gripped the edge of my napkin beneath the table. Lauren continued, her voice controlled, but cold. I am sorry he passed. Truly. But this house cannot keep revolving around a man who is no longer here. I stared at her. This house exists because of that man. And now other people live in it, she said. Your son lives here. Your granddaughter lives here. I live here. At some point, Maria, you have to stop making everyone tiptoe around your memories. My memories are not dangerous. They are suffocating. The word hung there, suffocating. I thought of Thomas struggling for breath in his final weeks. I thought of sitting beside him at night, counting the seconds between each inhale, terrified one would be his last. I thought of the way he still tried to smile when I adjusted his blanket. And now his memory was being called suffocating at his own table. Daniel finally spoke. Lauren, maybe that's enough. Maybe. Not stop. Not apologize. Maybe. Lauren looked at him with disbelief. I'm the only one saying what everyone is afraid to say? No, I said quietly. You are saying what only you believe. Her eyes snapped back to me. I had never challenged her so directly before. I could see that she did not like it. You think I'm the villain because I want this family to move forward, she said. But Daniel is exhausted. Emma is confused. And you, Maria, are clinging to the past, like it owes you something. I swallowed hard. The past gave me love, loyalty, a home, a husband who respected me. Lauren's mouth tightened. And what has clinging to it given you now? Before I could answer, Emma whispered, Grandma still has us, my sweet girl. She said it so softly, but it carried more kindness than anything else spoken at that table. I reached for her hand. Lauren noticed and leaned forward. Emma, go upstairs. Emma froze. But I'm eating. Now. Daniel looked up. Lauren, I said now. Emma's lip trembled. She slid from her chair and ran upstairs, her little feet thudding against the steps. I turned to Daniel. You let her speak to your daughter like that? Daniel looked torn, but not strong. Mom, please. That word again. Please. As if I were the problem because I refused to bleed quietly. Lauren pushed back her chair. I am tired of being treated like an outsider in a house I help maintain. You have lived here less than a year, I said. And in that year, I have cooked, cleaned, organized, paid bills. You paid groceries twice. Her face flushed. Daniel looked embarrassed, but he did not deny it. Lauren's voice dropped. You know what your problem is, Maria. You don't want a family. You want an audience for your grief? I stood up slowly. My knees ached, but I stood straight. Do not speak to me about grief as if it is a performance, I said. You have no idea what it means to wash the last coffee cup your husband ever used. You have no idea what it means to sleep beside an empty pillow after 42 years. You have no idea what it means to keep breathing, because a child and a grandchild still need you." For a moment, Lauren had no answer. Then she smiled. A small, cruel smile. "Then maybe act like they need you," she said, instead of acting like Thomas is the only person who ever mattered. Daniel whispered Lauren stop, but it was too late. Something had already been said that could not be unsaid. I looked at my son. "Do you agree with her?" His face went pale. "Mom, do you?" He looked down at his plate. That silence was an answer. I picked up my dish and carried it to the sink. My hands were trembling, but I refused to let them see me cry. Behind me, Lauren said, "See. This is what I mean. Everything becomes dramatic." I rinsed the plate slowly. Water ran over the porcelain. Steam rose against my face. I focused on that instead of the pain pressing behind my eyes. A few minutes later, Daniel came into the kitchen. "Mom?" he said quietly. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. I turned off the faucet. She meant every word. "She's under stress. So am I." He rubbed his forehead. "You have to understand, Lauren feels like there's no room for her here." I looked toward the dining room, toward the chair where Lauren had sat in Thomas's place, and called his memory suffocating. "There was room for her," I said. "She just wanted his room too." Daniel said nothing. That night, after everyone went upstairs, I found Emma sitting on the bottom step in her pajamas, holding something against her chest. "Grandma," she whispered. I sat beside her. "What are you doing awake?" Her eyes were red. "Mommy said I shouldn't ask about Grandpa anymore." My heart clenched. "She said it makes you sad," Emma continued, "and that I should stop bringing him up because he's gone." I pulled her gently into my arms. "You are never wrong for asking about someone who loved this family." Emma sniffled. "Did Grandpa love me?" I closed my eyes. Thomas had held Emma only a handful of times before he got too sick, but each time he looked at her as if God had handed him one last miracle. "Yes," I whispered. "More than you know." Emma leaned against me. "Then I don't want to forget him." I kissed the top of her head, and in that moment, I understood something that frightened me. Lauren was not only trying to remove Thomas from the walls, she was trying to remove him from Emma's heart. That was when my grief changed shape. It stopped being only sorrow. It became protection. I did not sleep well after Thomas's birthday dinner. The house was quiet but not peaceful. There is a difference. Peace has softness in it. Quiet can be sharp. That night, every creak in the floorboards sounded like a warning. Every whisper of wind against the windows made me open my eyes. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of Daniel and Lauren moving around upstairs. A drawer closing, water running, a door shutting harder than necessary. Then silence. On my nightstand sat a small, framed photograph of Thomas and me at Lake Erie. It had been taken the summer Daniel turned 12. Thomas had one arm around my shoulders, and I was laughing at something he had said. I could not remember the joke anymore, but I remembered the feeling. Safe, loved, chosen. I touched the frame with my fingertips. "What would you do, Tom?" I whispered. Of course, the room gave me no answer. Around midnight, I finally drifted into a thin, restless sleep. Then a sound woke me. Not loud, a dull scrape, something being dragged. My eyes opened at once. For a few seconds, I stayed still, trying to decide if I had dreamed it. Then it came again. A soft thud from somewhere downstairs, followed by the faint squeak of the back door. My heart began to pound. I sat up slowly. The clock on my nightstand read 12:47. At my age, you learn the sounds of your home, the way you learn the voices of people you love. I knew the difference between pipes settling and footsteps. I knew the back door's tired hinge. I knew when someone was trying not to be heard. I put on my robe and slipped my feet into slippers. The hallway was dark except for the nightlight near Emma's room. Her door was cracked open. I paused and looked in. She was asleep, one arm wrapped around a stuffed rabbit, her face soft and innocent beneath the glow. I kept walking. Halfway down the stairs, I saw movement through the kitchen window. Lauren. She was outside near the trash bins wearing a long cardigan over her pajamas. Her hair was pulled back and she was holding a cardboard box against her hip. The porch light was off, but the moon gave just enough light for me to see her lift the lid of the large trash bin. Then she tipped the box. Something heavy slid out. My breath caught. Lauren looked over her shoulder toward the house. I stepped back into the shadow of the stairwell, gripping the railing so tightly my knuckles hurt. She closed the bin, wiped her hands together as if she had finished an unpleasant chore, and came back inside. I moved quickly but quietly into the small hallway near the laundry room. Lauren entered through the kitchen, locked the door, and stood still for a moment. I could hear her breathing. Then she walked toward the stairs. At the bottom step, she stopped. For one terrible second, I thought she had seen me. Then Daniel's voice came from upstairs, low and tired. "Lauren." "I'm coming," she called softly. Her tone was normal, almost bored, as if she had not just carried part of my life into the cold. When she disappeared upstairs, I waited until their bedroom door closed. Then I went to the kitchen, unlocked the back door, and stepped outside. The night air bit through my robe. The grass was damp beneath my slippers. The trash bins stood beside the garage, ordinary and ugly in the moonlight. I lifted the lid. At first, I saw only a black garbage bag, coffee grounds spilled from a torn filter paper towels, and vegetable scraps. Then, I saw the corner of a frame. My hands went numb. I reached in and pulled it out. It was our wedding photograph. The glass was cracked from one corner to the center, splitting Thomas's face with a thin silver line. A smear of something dark stained the bottom of my dress in the picture. For a moment, I could not breathe. "No," I whispered. I dug deeper. There was the album from our 25th anniversary bent at the spine. There were loose photographs of Thomas holding Daniel as a baby. Thomas standing beside the maple tree. Thomas in his workshop. Thomas sitting in his chair with Emma asleep on his chest when she was only a few months old. There were letters, too. Letters Thomas had written me during the months he worked out of town early in our marriage. Letters I had tied with a blue ribbon and kept in the cedar box at the back of my closet. Lauren had gone into my room. Not just the living room. Not just the shelves. My room. My private things. A sound came out of me then, but it did not feel like crying. It was lower broken, almost animal. I pressed my hand over my mouth because I did not want to wake Emma. I did not want Lauren to have the satisfaction of seeing me collapse. One by one, I pulled the photographs from the trash. Coffee grounds stuck to Thomas's smile. Eggshells clung to the edge of our anniversary picture. One letter had been torn halfway down the middle. Another was wet and nearly unreadable. I carried everything to the porch table and spread it out beneath the weak light from the kitchen window. My hands shook so badly that I dropped the wedding frame twice before I could lay it flat. Then I heard voices from upstairs. The bedroom window above the kitchen was slightly open. Lauren's voice drifted down. "She needs to stop worshiping a dead man." I froze. Daniel answered, but his voice was too low for me to catch. Lauren continued sharper now. No, Daniel, I'm serious. This is not normal. Every room has his face in it. Every conversation comes back to him. Emma is starting to talk like she knew him. Again, Daniel murmured something. Then Lauren said, Your mother is using grief to control this house. I stood in the cold with my husband's ruined photographs in my hands and waited for my son to defend me. I waited for him to say, That's my father. I waited for him to say, You had no right. I waited for him to say anything that sounded like love. Instead, I heard him sigh. Lauren, just come to bed. That was all. Just come to bed. Not stop. Not apologize. Not what did you do? The silence after that was worse than the words. Something inside me became very still. I gathered the photographs and letters against my chest and went back inside. I locked the door carefully. I placed everything on the kitchen table, then took a clean towel and began wiping each picture. I did not hurry. There are moments when anger burns hot, but mine did not. Mine turned cold and clear. Every time I wiped coffee grounds from Thomas's face, I felt less like a wounded widow and more like the woman Thomas had trusted to survive him. At 1:23 in the morning, I opened the drawer beside the stove and took out the small address book I still kept, even though Daniel teased me for not putting every number into my phone. Robert Hayes, our family attorney, Thomas's friend, the man who had sat at our dining room table 3 months before Thomas died and helped him put everything in order. I stared at the number for a long time. It was late. Too late to call a respectable man. Too late for legal business. Too late for anything except emergencies. Then I looked at the cracked wedding photograph. This was an emergency. I dialed. Robert answered on the 5th ring, his voice rough with sleep. Hello, Robert, I said, and my voice broke on his name. There was a pause. Then he was fully awake. Maria. What happened? I looked at the table, at the ruined letters, at the bent photographs, at the life Lauren had tried to throw away. She went into my things, I said. She threw Thomas's pictures in the trash. Robert was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. Lauren. Yes. Is Daniel there? He knows enough. That silence told him more than I could. Robert exhaled slowly. Maria, are you safe? I am safe, I said. But I am done. What do you need from me? I closed my eyes. I saw Thomas in his hospital bed, his hand around mine, making me promise. Promise me you'll never let anyone push you out of the home we built. I need you here tomorrow morning, I said, with the house documents, the deed, the will, everything. Robert did not ask why. He already knew. Maria, he said gently, are you sure you want to do this? I looked toward the staircase. Above me slept my son, who had forgotten how to stand up for his father. Above me slept the woman who thought my grief made me weak. Down the hall slept my granddaughter, who still deserved to know where she came from. I picked up the wedding photograph and touched Thomas's cracked face. Yes, I said. Tomorrow morning she leaves. By 6 o'clock the next morning, I was already dressed. Not in my housecoat. Not in the soft cardigan I usually wore while making breakfast. I dressed the way I used to dress when Thomas and I went to the bank, or to church, or to meet with someone who needed to understand that kindness did not mean weakness. A navy blouse, gray slacks, my pearl earrings, low black shoes. Then I went downstairs. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee grounds and cold night air. The photographs and letters were spread across the table, where I had left them cleaned as best as I could manage. Some were still bent. Some were stained beyond repair. The wedding photograph sat in the center, the cracked glass catching the pale morning light. I made coffee, not because I wanted any, but because my hands needed something ordinary to do, while my heart prepared for something that would change the family forever. At 6:40, Emma came downstairs in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Grandma," she whispered. "Why are you dressed up?" I turned from the counter and softened my face. "Good morning, sweetheart." She looked at the table and froze. "Are those Grandpa's pictures?" "Yes." Her little face changed. Children understand more than adults want to admit. She walked slowly to the table and touched the edge of the cracked wedding frame. "What happened?" I knelt beside her. Someone made a very wrong choice. Her eyes filled. Was it Mommy? I did not answer right away. I would not lie to her, but I would not use her as a weapon either. I brushed a curl away from her cheek. "Today, the grown-ups need to talk. I want you to eat breakfast in the den, all right? Is Mommy in trouble?" I took a breath. Mommy needs to understand that hurting people has consequences. Emma looked toward the stairs. "Are you mad?" "Yes," I said gently. "But I still love you." She wrapped her arms around my neck. I held her close, and for a moment, I almost broke. Not because of Lauren, not even because of Daniel. Because Emma was standing in the middle of a storm she had not created, and I knew every decision I made from that point forward would shape what she believed love allowed. At 7:15, Daniel came downstairs first. He stopped when he saw me. Then he saw the table. His face went pale. "Mom," he said quietly. I poured coffee into a mug and set it in front of him. "Sit down, Daniel." He did not sit. "Where's Lauren? Still upstairs? What is this?" "You know what it is." He looked at the photographs again. His eyes moved over the wedding picture, the letters, the image of Thomas holding him as a baby. Shame flickered across his face, but shame is not the same as courage. "Mom," he said, lowering his voice, "I know last night upset you. Upset me." He flinched. I stepped closer to the table. "Daniel, your wife went into my private belongings, took letters your father wrote to me. Took photographs of your childhood and threw them into the trash with food scraps?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't know she took the letters. But you knew enough." He looked away. That was the answer. Before I could say more, Lauren came down the stairs. She wore a white robe and carried herself with the irritated confidence of someone expecting an argument she believed she could win. Her eyes moved from Daniel to me, then to the table. For 1 second, her expression changed. Not guilt, annoyance. "You went through the trash?" she asked. The question was so astonishing that I almost laughed. "No, Lauren," I said. "I rescued what you stole from my room and threw away." She crossed her arms. "I didn't steal anything. I removed items that were creating an unhealthy environment." Daniel closed his eyes. I looked at her carefully. "You went into my bedroom. I was cleaning. You opened my cedar box. You leave things everywhere, Maria. This house is impossible to manage. My letters from Thomas were not yours to manage." Lauren's face hardened. "You are making this sound dramatic." "It is dramatic," I said. "You threw away my husband," she scoffed. "I threw away paper." The room went silent. Even Daniel looked at her then. I placed one hand on the back of the chair to steady myself. "Pack your things." Lauren blinked. "Excuse me, you heard me." Daniel stepped forward. "Mom, wait." "No." I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "Lauren will leave this house today." Lauren stared at me, then laughed once sharp and ugly. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious. This is Daniel's home too. No, I said, it is not. Her smile returned, but it was strained now. Maria, don't embarrass yourself. Daniel is your son. We live here. You invited us. I invited you to stay temporarily. I did not invite you to erase my husband, disrespect my privacy, or plan the sale of a house you do not own. Daniel's head snapped up. Mom Lauren's eyes flashed. So now you're spying on my phone calls? I heard enough. You heard what you wanted to hear? I heard you call me one old woman. Daniel looked at Lauren. She did not deny it. Instead, she lifted her chin. Maybe because that is how you're acting. Alone in this big house surrounded by dead memories, refusing to think about what makes sense for the living. I felt the words strike, but they did not move me. Not anymore. The living, I said, do not get to build their future by digging through a widow's grief. Lauren stepped closer. You think you can just throw me out? Yes. This is marital property. I looked at Daniel. Did you tell her that he swallowed? I may have said someday. Someday is not today. Lauren pointed toward the hallway. Daniel is your only child. This house will be his eventually. That means it is our family's future. No, I said. It means you were counting on my death before I was finished living. Her face went red. How dare you? How dare I? My voice trembled for the first time. You stood in my home, slept under my roof, let me cook for you, let me care for your child, and then you threw my husband into the garbage because his memory was inconvenient to your plans? Daniel whispered. Mom, please. I turned to him. Do not please me today, Daniel. Not today. A knock sounded at the front door. Lauren glanced toward it, startled. I did not move. Daniel looked confused. Who is that? Someone who should have been involved sooner. I walked to the door and opened it. Robert Hayes stood on the porch in a dark suit, holding a leather folder. He was in his late 60s with silver hair and tired but kind eyes. He had been Thomas's friend for nearly 30 years. He had sat beside me at the funeral. He had carried one corner of Thomas's casket. Maria, he said softly. Thank you for coming. He stepped inside and looked toward the kitchen. His eyes fell on the photographs spread across the table, and something in his face tightened. Lauren straightened immediately. Who is this Robert? Looked at her. Robert Hayes, Mrs. Griffin's attorney. Lauren gave a small laugh. Attorney? This is ridiculous. Robert did not smile. I assure you Mrs. Griffin's rights are not ridiculous. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Mr. Hayes, this is a family matter. Robert turned to him. Family matters often become legal matters when people forget boundaries. Lauren's confidence flickered. I walked back to the kitchen table and stood beside Thomas's wedding photograph. Robert, I said, please explain to Lauren who owns this house. Lauren rolled her eyes. We know Maria owns it technically. No, Robert said, opening the folder. Not technically, entirely. The room changed. It was subtle, but I felt it. Lauren's shoulders stiffened. Daniel stared at the folder. Robert removed several documents and placed them neatly on the table, careful not to touch the photographs. The deed to this property is solely in Maria Griffin's name, he said. Thomas Griffin transferred his interest before his passing. The will also confirms that Daniel Griffin has no ownership claim, no management authority, and no legal right to sell, lease, mortgage, or otherwise control this property while Maria is alive. Lauren's mouth opened, then closed. Daniel looked like someone had pulled the floor from beneath him. I watched my son, and though I was angry, the pain was still there. A mother's heart does not stop hurting just because it finally stands up. Lauren recovered first. That doesn't change the fact that we live here. Robert nodded. You have been permitted to stay here by Maria's consent. Consent can be withdrawn. Her voice sharpened. You can't just put a mother and child out. I spoke before Robert could. Emma is not being put out. Emma will be safe. This is about you. Lauren looked at Daniel. Say something. Daniel looked at me. Mom, we need time. You had time, I said. You used it to let your wife remove your father from this home. His eyes filled, but I could not comfort him. Not yet. Lauren pointed at the table. All this over some old pictures. Robert's expression hardened. Mrs. Griffin, I would advise you to stop minimizing what you did. She turned on him. And I would advise you to stay out of my family. Robert closed the folder slowly. I am here because Maria asked me to be, and because Thomas asked me before he died to make sure she was protected if anyone ever tried to pressure her out of this house. The words hit Daniel hardest. He looked at me. Dad said that I nodded. Daniel's face crumpled for half a second before he forced it still. Lauren whispered, This is insane. No, I said. This is the first sane morning we have had in months. I picked up the cracked wedding photograph and held it against my chest. Lauren, I said you will pack what belongs to you. You will leave my home today. If you need to arrange a place to stay, call your parents, call a friend, call a hotel. But you will not sleep under this roof again. Her eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. I looked at the woman who had mistaken my silence for surrender. No, I said. I regret not doing it sooner. For a moment after Robert spoke, no one moved. The kitchen felt too small for the truth that had just entered it. The morning light came through the curtains in thin gold lines touching the ruined photographs on the table, the coffee mugs, the leather folder. Lauren's pale face, Daniel's lowered eyes. Lauren was the first to recover. This is absurd, she said, though her voice had lost some of its sharpness. Daniel is her son. Robert remained calm. Yes, he is her only son. Yes. So you're telling me he has no rights here? I am telling you he has no ownership rights to this property while Maria Griffin is alive? Lauren let out a bitter laugh. That is not how families work. No, I said quietly. That is how property works. Her eyes cut toward me. I had never seen her look at me that way before. Not irritated, not condescending, afraid. It was buried under anger, but I saw it. Lauren had built her plans on an assumption that I was old, sentimental, and legally uninformed. Now the floor beneath that assumption was cracking. Daniel finally sat down at the table. He looked at the deed as if it were written in a foreign language. Mom, he said, Dad transferred the house to you. Yes. When before he died, his voice broke slightly. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him for a long moment. Because I did not think my son needed to be warned that his mother's home belonged to her. That silenced him. Robert adjusted his glasses and slid one document forward. Thomas was very clear. He wanted Maria protected. The deed was updated, the estate documents were revised, and the will confirms that Daniel's inheritance, if any, would be determined only after Maria's passing and according to her decisions. Lauren's face tightened at the words, if any. If any, she repeated. So now she's threatening to cut Daniel out. Robert looked at her. No one said that. You implied it. I stated a legal fact. Lauren turned to Daniel. Are you hearing this? Your own mother is sitting here with a lawyer treating you like a stranger? Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. Lauren, stop. No, I won't stop. She pointed toward the photographs. This entire thing is emotional manipulation. She lays out a few old pictures, calls a lawyer, and suddenly we're criminals. I felt my fingers curl against the back of the chair. You went into my bedroom. Lauren ignored me. You threw away private letters, I continued. She looked at Robert instead of me. Is throwing away paper illegal now? Robert's voice cooled. Entering someone's private space, removing personal property, destroying or discarding it without permission, and attempting to pressure an elderly homeowner regarding property decisions can become very serious depending on the circumstances. Lauren's lips parted. Daniel looked up sharply. Pressure? Robert turned to him. Maria told me she overheard discussions about selling the home. Daniel's face changed. Lauren spoke quickly. That was exploratory. There is nothing wrong with understanding the value of an asset. My home is not your asset, I said. She snapped back. It is this family's biggest asset. There it was. The truth plain and ugly. Not home. Asset. Not memories. Value. Not Thomas's life's work. Opportunity. I looked at Daniel. Is that what you think too? He swallowed. Mom, I never wanted to hurt you. That is not what I asked. His eyes glistened. I thought, maybe someday if the house became too much for you, we could all make a decision together. Together, I repeated. But you were already speaking to a realtor. Lauren shot him a warning look. Daniel looked down. Robert opened another page from his folder. Maria, you mentioned a name last night? Do you remember the realtor? I nodded. I heard Lauren say she wanted a rough estimate. I did not hear the name. Robert looked at Lauren. Would you like to clarify? Lauren folded her arms. No. Daniel whispered. It was Carter Bloom. Lauren turned on him. Daniel. He looked exhausted. What she already knows. My stomach sank. You knew his name. Daniel's face crumpled with shame. Lauren reached out first. Then Carter called me because he said he needed to speak with a family member. A family member, I said. Not the owner. I told him nothing was official. But you spoke to him? Yes. And you did not tell me. He closed his eyes. No. That small word hurt more than Lauren's shouting, because Lauren had always been an outsider trying to claim what was not hers. But Daniel was my son. Daniel had watched his father sand those porch rails, plant that maple tree, build those bookshelves. Daniel knew this house was not just wood and brick. And still, he had let someone measure it for sale behind my back. Lauren threw her hands up. We were trying to plan responsibly. Daniel and I are drowning Maria. Do you understand that drowning? Daniel's head snapped toward her. Lauren. I went still. Drowning, the kitchen changed again. Lauren realized too late what she had revealed. Robert looked from Lauren to Daniel. Financially, Daniel said nothing. Lauren's cheeks flushed. That is private. So were my letters, I said. Her mouth tightened. I turned to my son. Daniel, what does she mean? He stared at the table. Daniel. He took a breath that shook. We have debt. How much? Lauren snapped. That is none of your business. I looked at her. You made it my business when you tried to sell my home to solve it. Daniel whispered a lot. The words seemed to drain him. I sat slowly because my knees felt weak. From what? Daniel looked at Lauren, then back at me. Some investments, credit cards, a business course Lauren wanted to take, a rental property deal that fell through. A rental property deal, I repeated. Lauren lifted her chin. It was a legitimate opportunity. It was a disaster, Daniel said quietly. Her eyes flashed. You agreed to it? Because you said we'd double our money. And you said your mother would help if we needed breathing room. The silence after that was absolute. I stared at Daniel. He looked like a boy again, caught with something broken in his hands. Is that true? I asked. He could barely meet my eyes. I said, you would never let Emma suffer. I pressed a hand to my chest. There are betrayals that come with shouting and slammed doors. And then there are betrayals that arrive quietly dressed as assumptions. My son had not only failed to protect me, he had counted on my love as collateral. Lauren stepped forward, sensing weakness. Maria, no one wanted to force you, but look at the reality. You're one person in a 4-bedroom house. We're a young family trying to survive. Would it really be so terrible to sell payoff debt and move somewhere easier for everyone? Easier for whom, I asked. For all of us. No, I said. For you. Daniel whispered, Mom, I was going to talk to you. When? After the estimate. After the listing agreement. After Lauren finished removing every trace of your father so the house looked less inconvenient to buyers. He flinched. Lauren's voice rose. That is unfair. Unfair. I stood again, anger giving strength to my legs. Unfair is a woman giving you shelter and receiving disrespect in return. Unfair is a grandmother watching her granddaughter be taught that love should be hidden because it makes adults uncomfortable. Unfair is a widow finding her husband's face under coffee grounds while her son sleeps upstairs. Daniel covered his mouth with one hand. Lauren looked away first. Robert spoke gently. Maria, you do not need to justify your decision, but I did. Not for Lauren, for Daniel, for the little boy he had been, for the man he still might become if he could bear to face what he had allowed. Your father knew this could happen, I said. Daniel looked up, tears in his eyes. What he knew, grief makes people vulnerable. He knew I would give too much if someone I loved asked. That is why he protected me legally when I might not protect myself emotionally. Daniel's face twisted. Dad thought I would take the house. No, I said softly. I think your father worried you might let someone else try. Lauren scoffed, but there was fear in it now. So that's it. I'm the villain, and Daniel is the weak son. I looked at her. You are responsible for what you did. Daniel is responsible for what he allowed. Robert gathered the papers into a neat stack. Lauren Maria has withdrawn permission for you to reside here. I suggest you begin making arrangements. Lauren's eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? Robert met her gaze. Then we proceed formally. For the first time that morning, Lauren had no quick answer. Daniel stood slowly. Lauren, go pack a bag. She turned to him, stunned. You're taking her side? He looked at the photographs, then at me, then at the cracked image of his father. I don't know what side I'm on, he said, voice breaking. But I know this was wrong. Lauren stared at him as if he had slapped her. I wanted to feel relief. Instead, I felt tired, because the truth had finally entered my kitchen, but it had not healed anything yet. It had only shown us how much damage had been hiding beneath our roof. Lauren stepped back from the table, her face hardening into something colder than anger. Fine, she said. But don't think this is over. I looked at the deed in Robert's folder, then at Thomas's ruined letters, then at my son's bowed head. No, I said, it isn't over. And deep down, I knew the worst of Lauren had not yet come out. Lauren did not pack quietly. That would have required humility, and humility had never lived comfortably inside her. She went upstairs with Daniel following a few steps behind her, and within minutes, I heard drawers opening, closet doors sliding, hangers scraping against rods. Then came the sound of something hitting the floor hard enough to make the ceiling tremble. Robert remained in the kitchen with me. He did not speak right away. That was one thing I appreciated about him. He understood that silence could be respectful when a person's life was cracking open. I stood at the sink, staring out at the maple tree. Its leaves moved gently in the morning wind, as if the world had not changed at all. But inside that house, everything had changed. "I'm sorry," Maria Roberts said at last. I shook my head. "You didn't do this?" "No." But Thomas worried something like this might happen. I turned from the window. "Did he tell you that Robert hesitated? That hesitation hurt." "He didn't name Daniel," Roberts said carefully. "He loved his son, but he said you had a heart that gave before it questioned. He wanted the paperwork strong enough to protect you from anyone who mistook love for permission." I closed my eyes. That sounded like Thomas. Even dying, he had been thinking ahead. Even when his own body was failing, he had been building one last wall around me. From upstairs, Lauren's voice rose. "You're really going to let her do this?" Daniel answered too softly for me to hear. Then Lauren shouted, "She is manipulating you with guilt!" Robert looked toward the ceiling. I picked up the cracked wedding photograph and set it gently aside. "She's not done." "No," he said. "I don't believe she is." A few minutes later, Lauren came down the stairs carrying a suitcase in one hand and her phone in the other. She was dressed now in jeans and a beige sweater, her hair pulled back too tightly. Daniel followed with a duffel bag, looking as if he had aged 10 years overnight. Lauren dropped the suitcase near the front door. There she said, "Are you satisfied?" "No," I said, "but it is a start." Her eyes narrowed. "You know what your problem is, Maria. You think pain gives you authority over everyone else." I looked at her calmly. "No. Ownership gives me authority over my home. Pain only taught me to stop apologizing for it." Daniel winced. Lauren turned toward him. "Say something." He looked at her, then at me. "Lauren, maybe we should go to your parents' house for a few days." Her mouth fell open. "A few days, Daniel? She is throwing your wife out of the home you grew up in." "The home my father left to my mother," he said quietly. For one second, I saw something shift in him. Not enough. Not yet. But something? Lauren saw it too, and panic flashed across her face. Then her anger changed direction. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice rising. "Fine. Let's tell the truth." Robert stepped forward slightly. "Lauren, I would be careful." She laughed. "Of course you would say that. You're being paid to protect her little widow act." I felt Daniel stiffen. "Don't." Lauren ignored him. "The truth is, this house is wasted on her. 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, a huge yard, and for what? So she can sit here talking to pictures?" My hands went cold. Daniel said, "Lauren, stop." "No, I am done stopping." She pointed at me. "You know how many families would kill for a house like this? You know how much money is sitting in these walls while we drown in debt?" "There it is," I said softly. She glared at me. "Yes, there it is. Money, reality, life. Things you don't want to talk about because you'd rather polish dead memories than help your living family." "Help," I repeated. "You never asked for help. You plotted for control." I tried to make Daniel see sense. "By calling a realtor behind my back because you would have said no?" "Yes," I said, "I would have." Lauren threw up her hands. "Exactly. You would rather watch your son struggle than give up a house you don't even need." Daniel's face twisted. "Don't speak for me." She spun toward him. "I have been speaking for both of us because you never speak at all." That landed. Daniel looked down, And for the first time, Lauren's anger seemed to come from a place deeper than greed. Not softer, not innocent, but desperate. She continued, voice shaking now. You promised me things would get better. You said your mother would understand. You said this house was your future. I looked at Daniel. He did not deny it. My throat tightened. Daniel. He swallowed hard. I said, eventually. I said eventually it might be mine. And Lauren heard what she wanted, I said. Lauren snapped. No. I heard what he was too cowardly to say clearly. Daniel looked at her then. I never told you to throw away Dad's pictures. No, you just complained about living in his shadow. The room went silent. Daniel's face drained of color. I felt as if the air had been pulled from my lungs. What I whispered. Lauren smiled bitterly, realizing she had found a sharper knife. Oh, he didn't tell you that part. Your perfect son. He said every time he walked into this house, he felt like Thomas Griffin was still judging him. Daniel's eyes filled. Lauren. He said he was tired of being compared to a dead man. I gripped the table. Daniel stepped toward me. Mom, I was upset. I didn't mean, did you say it? I asked. His mouth trembled. Did you? He looked at the floor. Yes. The word entered me quietly, then broke everything it touched. All those years I had tried not to compare him. All those times I had swallowed my disappointment when he forgot birthdays, missed visits, avoided hard conversations. I had never asked him to be Thomas. I had only hoped he would remember him with love. Lauren saw my pain and pressed harder. And do you know why he said it? Because you never let this house become anything but Thomas's shrine. You made Daniel feel like a guest too. Daniel shook his head. That's not fair. But it's true enough, isn't it? Lauren said. I looked at my son, waiting for him to deny it fully. He did not. He only whispered, I didn't know how to say I felt trapped here. That was the second blow. Not from Lauren. From Daniel. You felt trapped, I said slowly, in the home your father built for you. His tears spilled then. No, Mom. Not like that. After he died, everything froze. You froze. The house froze. I didn't know how to reach you. You could have tried kindness. I did. No, I said. You tried avoidance. There is a difference. Lauren stepped between us. This is exactly what I mean. She makes you the villain every time you tell the truth. I looked at Lauren. You are not interested in truth. You are interested in using truth as a weapon. Her face hardened again. And you use grief as a shield. Robert's voice cut through the room. Enough. Lauren turned on him. Stay out of this. No, Robert said. You have made repeated statements about selling a property you do not own. You have admitted financial motive. You have removed and damaged Maria's personal belongings. I strongly suggest you leave before this becomes worse for you. Lauren stared at him, breathing hard. Then Emma appeared at the hallway entrance. She was holding her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with fear. Daddy, she whispered. Every adult in the room froze. Daniel immediately wiped his face. Emma, sweetheart, go back to the den. Are you leaving? Lauren's expression changed. For a second, she looked almost human. Then she crossed to Emma and knelt. Grandma is making Mommy leave. I stepped forward. Lauren. Emma looked at me frightened. Grandma? I bent down, slowly, keeping my voice gentle. This is not your fault, sweetheart. Lauren put an arm around Emma. Tell Grandma you don't want Mommy to go. Daniel's voice sharpened. Lauren, don't do that. She looked up at him. Don't do what? Let our daughter speak. You're using her. Lauren stood pulling Emma closer. I am protecting my family. No, I said, my voice trembling now. You are hiding behind a child because the truth has nowhere else to hide. Emma began to cry. That broke Daniel. He walked over and gently took Emma from Lauren's side. Go upstairs and get dressed, baby. I'll come talk to you in a minute. Emma clung to him. Is Grandma mad at me? I crossed the room and touched her cheek. Never. Not one day in your life. She nodded, crying silently, and went upstairs. When she was gone, Daniel turned to Lauren with a look I had never seen on his face before. You don't bring Emma into this again. Lauren stared at him. Now you have a backbone. He flinched, but he did not look away. She laughed bitterly. Fine. Keep pretending this is about pictures, but we all know what it's really about. And what is that? I asked. Lauren looked directly at me. You had power, she said. You just enjoyed watching us beg around it. I shook my head. No, Lauren, I enjoyed believing you were family. For the first time, she had no answer. Daniel picked up her suitcase and set it by the door. His hands were shaking. Go to your parents' house, he said. Lauren stared at him. Are you coming? He looked at me, then at the stairs where Emma had disappeared. I don't know, he said. Lauren's face twisted with fury and fear. You will regret choosing her, she whispered. Daniel's voice broke. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm finally seeing what happened. Lauren grabbed her suitcase handle. At the door, she turned back one last time. This house will bury you, Maria, she said. All these memories you love so much. One day they'll be all you have. I looked at Thomas's photograph on the table. Then I looked at her. Memories built on love are not a grave, I said. But a future built on greed can become one. Lauren opened the door and walked out. The sound of it closing behind her echoed through the house, but instead of relief, I felt the storm gathering. Because Lauren had left with her suitcase, not with her pride. And people like Lauren always came back for that. After Lauren left, the house did not feel victorious. It felt wounded. Her suitcase wheels had barely rolled down the porch steps before Daniel sank into the nearest chair and covered his face with both hands. Robert stood near the table, quiet and watchful, while I gathered Thomas's damaged photographs into a careful stack. Outside, Lauren's car door slammed. A moment later, the engine started. Then she was gone. For months, I had imagined that if Lauren ever left my home, the air would feel lighter. I thought maybe the walls would breathe again. I thought Thomas's memory would settle back into place like a picture returned to its proper hook. But that morning, the silence she left behind was not peace. It was aftermath. Daniel looked up at me with red eyes. Mom? I did not answer, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I was afraid of what would come out if I opened my mouth too soon. A mother can endure many wounds, but the ones made by her own child have a different depth. They do not simply hurt. They echo. Robert cleared his throat gently. Maria, would you like me to stay? I looked at Daniel, then at the stairs where Emma had gone. No, I said softly. Thank you, Robert. I think this next part has to be between my son and me. Robert nodded. He gathered his folder, then paused beside me. Call me if anything changes, anything at all. I will. He placed one hand lightly on my shoulder, the way old friends do when words are not enough. Then he left. The front door closed behind him. Daniel and I were alone in the kitchen. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel said, I'm sorry. I looked at him. He seemed smaller than he had an hour earlier. Not physically, but in spirit. His shoulders sagged. His face looked pale and tired. I could see the boy he had been, the little one who used to come to me with scraped knees and broken toys, trusting that I could fix anything. But I could not fix this for him. Sorry for what I asked. He blinked. What? Tell me what you're sorry for. His mouth opened, then closed. I watched him struggle, and that struggle told me more than any apology could. He was sorry I was hurt. Sorry Lauren had gone too far. Sorry the morning had exploded. But was he sorry for his own choices? For his silence? For standing beside a woman who had treated his father's memory like trash? I'm sorry she threw away the pictures, he said. I nodded slowly. That is a beginning. His face tightened. Mom, please don't do that. Do what? Talk to me like I'm one of your library children. Pain flashed through me. Then stop acting like a child who got caught instead of a man who made choices. He flinched. I had never spoken to Daniel that way before, not even when he was young and reckless. Not when he wrecked Thomas's old pickup at 17. Not when he dropped out of college for a semester because he needed space. I had always softened the truth for him. Maybe that had been part of the problem. Daniel stood abruptly. You think I wanted this? I think you allowed it. That's not fair. No, I said. What happened in this house was not fair. He paced to the sink, then back again. You don't understand what it's been like. You are right, I said. I do not understand how my son could hear his wife call his father a dead man and still go to bed beside her. His face crumpled. I was trying to keep my marriage together, at the cost of your mother's dignity, at the cost of everything, he shouted. The sound startled both of us. Daniel turned away, breathing hard. Do you think I'm proud of this? Do you think I wanted to be in debt, wanted my wife angry every day, wanted to come home and feel like I was failing everyone? I stayed still. He continued, voice breaking. Lauren was scared. I was scared. Bills kept coming. The investment collapsed. Credit cards filled up. Every time I tried to talk to her, she said I wasn't man enough to fix it. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was, the wound beneath the wound. Daniel had not simply been greedy. He had been ashamed. And shame, when left alone, can make a person betray people who love them, because love feels easier to exploit than judgment. But understanding is not the same as excusing. You should have come to me, I said. He laughed bitterly. And say what, Mom? I'm 43 years old and I ruined my finances. Mom, I can't protect my wife and daughter. Mom, I'm not half the man Dad was. His words hung between us. I stepped closer. Thomas never needed you to be half of him. Daniel's eyes filled again. Everyone else did. No, I said. Lauren did. Your own fear did. But I did not. He looked at me, then really looked. I only needed you to be honest, I said. And kind. His shoulders shook. For a second, I wanted to cross the room and hold him. Every instinct in me reached toward him. But then I looked at the table, at the cracked wedding photograph, at the letters that would never be whole again. And I stayed where I was. Daniel wiped his face. What do you want me to do? I took a breath. This was the moment I had dreaded since the night before. Because asking Lauren to leave had been painful, but clear. Asking Daniel to leave was something else entirely. It felt like cutting into my own heart with steady hands. I want you to pack a bag too, I said. He stared at me. What you need to leave this house for a while. His face went blank. Mom, no. Yes, I didn't throw the pictures away, but you helped create the house where she believed she could. He shook his head. I'm your son. I know. This is my home. No, Daniel, I said softly. It was your childhood home. It is my home now. The words hurt him. I saw it. But they were true. He stepped back as if I had pushed him. So you're throwing me out too. I am asking you to leave temporarily. Because of Lauren? Because of you. That silenced him. I forced myself to continue. You need time away from this house, away from the assumption that because I am your mother, I will absorb whatever pain you bring through my door. You need to decide what kind of man you want to be when no one is cushioning the consequences. Daniel's jaw trembled. Where am I supposed to go? You can stay at a hotel, with a friend, with Lauren's parents if you choose. You are an adult. He looked wounded, almost betrayed. You sound so cold. I am not cold, I said, and my voice finally broke. I am heartbroken. There is a difference. He looked away. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Emma. I lowered my voice. Emma can stay here today if you and Lauren need time to make arrangements. I will not put her in the middle of this. But you and Lauren need to decide where she sleeps tonight together calmly without using her as a shield. Daniel looked toward the stairs. You're not kicking her out. Never. His eyes closed in relief and shame. I love that child, I said. And because I love her, she cannot grow up believing family means letting people destroy you. Daniel sat down heavily. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. For once I said, do not start by trying to fix it. Start by telling the truth. He looked at me. Tell Lauren the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Tell Emma only what is appropriate, but do not lie to her. And someday, if you want to come back into this home, you will come back with respect. Not entitlement, not excuses. Respect. He nodded slowly, but tears were running down his face. I went to the table and picked up one photograph. It showed Thomas teaching Daniel to ride a bicycle in the driveway. Daniel was maybe 6 years old, helmet crooked mouth, open in fear and laughter. Thomas ran beside him, one hand hovering behind the seat, ready to catch him, but not holding on. I handed it to Daniel. His fingers shook as he took it. He let go, I said. Daniel stared at the picture. He had to, I continued. Otherwise, you never would have learned balance. Daniel covered his mouth, and a sob broke through him. I wanted to hold him then more than ever, but I did not. Because sometimes love is not catching someone before they fall. Sometimes love is stepping back so they finally feel the ground beneath them. Daniel packed a small bag 20 minutes later. Before he left, he stood in the doorway with his coat over one arm. I love you, Mom, he said. I love you too, I answered. He waited, maybe hoping I would change my mind. I did not. When the door closed behind him, I sat at the kitchen table alone, surrounded by the damaged photographs of the man who had once promised we would face everything together. And for the first time since Thomas died, I understood that keeping his memory alive did not mean refusing to let go. It meant remembering how brave love had taught me to be. After Daniel left, I thought Emma would stay upstairs for a while. Children often hide when adults break the world around them. They tuck themselves into corners behind doors under blankets, hoping that if they become small enough, the storm will forget them. But Emma came down 20 minutes later. She was dressed in jeans and a pink sweater, her hair brushed unevenly as if she had tried to do it herself. In her arms, she held her stuffed rabbit and a small blue book with a glittery cover. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the photographs without really seeing them. Grandma, she said softly. I turned at once. Come here, sweetheart. She walked to me slowly, studying my face the way children do when they are trying to measure how much truth they are allowed to ask for. Did Daddy leave too? I swallowed. Yes. Just for a little while, because Mommy threw away Grandpa's pictures. Partly, I said. And partly because Daddy needs time to think about what happened. Emma looked at the table. Is everyone mad? I opened my arms. She stepped into them, and I pulled her close. No one is mad at you, I whispered. Not one bit of this is your fault. She nodded, but her little body stayed tense. Then she lifted the blue book. I saved something, she said. I looked down. What do you mean? She opened the book carefully. It was one of those children's journals with lined pages and tiny stars in the corners. Between 2 pages, tucked flat and protected, was a photograph. My breath caught. It was Thomas teaching Daniel to ride a bike, not the larger copy I had handed Daniel earlier. This was a smaller version, one I had forgotten existed. Thomas was running beside Daniel in the driveway, one hand hovering behind the bicycle seat. Daniel's mouth was open in a terrified laugh. The maple tree was young in the background, thin and hopeful. Emma pulled it out with both hands. I found it on the floor when Mommy was putting pictures in the box last week, she said. I thought maybe it fell by accident. But then Mommy said, old pictures make the house sad, so I hid it. I took the photograph like it was made of glass. You saved this? Emma nodded. I didn't want Grandpa to be lost. Something inside me folded. I pressed the picture to my chest and closed my eyes. I had spent all night rescuing Thomas from the trash, but this child had been protecting him before I even knew he was in danger. Oh, Emma, I whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. Was it wrong? No. I pulled her into my arms again. No, baby. It was loving. She began to cry, then not loudly, but with the exhausted sadness of a child who had been carrying too much. I'm sorry, Grandma. For what? I heard Mommy say Grandpa was just a dead man. My throat tightened. Emma wiped her face with her sleeve. And I didn't say anything because she gets mad when I talk about him. I cupped her face gently. Listen to me. You are a child. It is not your job to fight grown-up battles, but I wanted to. I know. She said if I kept asking about Grandpa, you would cry more. She said I was making you stay sad. I felt a cold anger rise in me, but I kept my face calm for Emma. That was not fair of her to say. Emma looked down. I don't want to make you sad. You don't, I said firmly. When you ask about your grandpa, you help me remember love. That is different from sadness. She looked unsure. But you cry sometimes. Yes, I said. Because I miss him. But tears are not always bad. Sometimes tears are just love with nowhere else to go. Emma thought about that. Then she whispered, Mommy said this house was going to be her future house. The words struck me hard. I stayed very still. When did she say that Emma twisted the rabbit's ear in her fingers? Lots of times. When she was on the phone. And once when she was mad because Daddy said you weren't ready? Ready for what, to move somewhere smaller? I closed my eyes briefly. Lauren had not only been planning, she had been planting ideas around Emma, making the child believe my home was already promised, already waiting for me to disappear from it. Emma continued. She said big houses should go to families with children, not old ladies who talk to pictures. My hand tightened around the photograph. I wanted to say something sharp. I wanted to tell Emma her mother was wrong in every possible way. But children are made from both parents, and when you attack one, they often feel the wound inside themselves. So, I chose my words carefully. Your mother said things she should not have said. Emma looked at me. Do you hate her? The question hurt. No, I said after a moment. I do not hate her. Then why did you make her leave? Because love and permission are not the same thing. I can hope your mother becomes better, but I do not have to let her hurt me while I wait. Emma leaned against my side. Is Daddy bad? She asked. I looked at the staircase, remembering Daniel's face as he walked out. No, I said. Your daddy is not bad, but he made some weak choices, and weak choices can hurt people very badly. Emma nodded slowly, as if storing the sentence somewhere important. For a while, we sat together in silence. Then she looked at the damaged photographs on the table. Can we fix them? Some of them, I said. Not all. Can we put Grandpa back on the wall? I smiled through the ache in my chest. Yes, we can. Emma climbed onto the chair beside me. Together we sorted the photographs into piles, ones with cracked frames, ones with stained corners, ones that needed new backing, ones that might never look the same, but still deserved to be kept. She handled each picture carefully. Is this Grandpa holding Daddy? Yes. Daniel was only 2 days old. He looked scared. Your grandpa, Emma nodded. I laughed softly. He was terrified. He said Daniel was so tiny he was afraid he would break him. Emma smiled. Did he break him? No. He loved him. She looked at the picture for a long time. Maybe Daddy forgot. The words were simple, but they pierced me. Maybe Daddy forgot. Maybe that was what grief, shame, debt, and a controlling marriage had done. Not erased love completely, but buried it so deep Daniel could no longer reach it without pain. Maybe, I said. Emma picked up another photograph. It showed Thomas sitting in his chair with baby Emma asleep on his chest. She stared at it. That's me? Yes. I don't remember. You were very small. Did he hold me a lot every chance he got? Her lips trembled. Mommy said, I only met him a few times, so it doesn't matter. I took her hand. It matters. Love does not become less real because you were too young to remember it. Emma pressed the photograph to her chest, the same way I had done earlier. Can this one go in my room? Yes, I said. If you want it? I do. By late morning, the kitchen table had become a place of rescue instead of ruin. Emma brought tape tissues and a little box of stickers. I explained that we should not put stickers on the old photographs, and she nodded seriously as if I had given her an important museum job. Around noon, the phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Emma saw it too. Is Daddy coming back? She asked. I don't know, I answered. Hello? Daniel's voice was rough. Mom, is Emma okay? She is safe. A pause. Can I talk to her? I looked at Emma. Your daddy wants to speak with you. She hesitated, then took the phone. Hi, Daddy. I could not hear his words, but I watched her face. Sadness, relief, confusion, love. Then she said, Grandma says I can remember Grandpa. Another pause. Emma looked at the photograph in her hand. You should remember him too. I turned away because my eyes filled. When she handed the phone back, Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he whispered, Mom. Yes. I found a hotel. Just for tonight. All right. Lauren went to her parents. All right. He breathed unsteadily. Emma wants to stay with you today. She can. Thank you. I waited. Then he said, I'm sorry she felt like she had to save that picture. I looked at Emma, who was now placing Thomas's photo gently beside her rabbit. So am I said. After we hung up, Emma and I carried the small saved photograph to her room. She chose a place on her nightstand beside a lamp shaped like a moon. Grandpa can watch over me here, she said. I kissed her forehead. I think he would like that. That afternoon, as sunlight filled the hallway, I realized Lauren had failed, in one way she had not expected. She had tried to remove Thomas from the house. Instead, she had taught Emma why he mattered. And maybe, just maybe, that little girl's love would become the thread that led Daniel back to the man his father had raised him to be. Lauren came back the next afternoon with reinforcements. I saw the car before I saw her face. A dark SUV pulled into my driveway just after 2 o'clock, its tires crunching over the gravel edge near the maple tree. I was in the living room with Emma sorting through the last of Thomas's damaged photographs. We had placed the ones we could save in a neat stack beside the sofa. Emma looked up from the floor. "Is that Mommy?" I moved to the window. Lauren stepped out first, then her mother, Patricia Miller, then her father, Mark Miller. Patricia was a tall woman with perfectly styled silver blonde hair and a face that always looked prepared to disapprove. Mark was broad, heavy-set, and red-faced, the kind of man who believed volume was the same thing as authority. My stomach tightened. "Emma," I said gently, "go upstairs to your room for a little while." "But please, sweetheart." She looked toward the window, then nodded. "Is Mommy still mad? I think the adults need to talk." Emma hugged her rabbit and went upstairs. The doorbell rang before I reached the hallway. I opened the door, but did not step aside. Lauren stood between her parents wearing sunglasses, though the porch was shaded. Patricia looked past me into the house as if inspecting a hotel room. Mark planted his feet wide on the porch. Patricia said, her voice cold. "We need to talk." I kept one hand on the door. "Lauren can arrange a time with Robert Hayes if this is about the house." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "A lawyer? For family." I looked at Lauren. "Your daughter made it necessary." Lauren removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, but I could not tell if it was from crying or anger. "I just want to get some of my things. You may collect your belongings," I said, "but your parents do not need to come inside." Mark gave a short laugh. "You don't get to talk to my daughter like she's some criminal." I met his eyes. "And she did not get to go into my bedroom and throw away my husband's letters." Patricia waved one hand as if brushing away dust. "Lauren told us about the pictures. Frankly, Maria, this has been blown completely out of proportion." Something in me went still. "Out of proportion," I repeated. Patricia leaned closer. "You are a grieving woman. No one denies that. But grief can make people possessive, controlling, even cruel." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because Lauren had clearly learned from her mother. "You came here to call me cruel on my own porch." "We came here," Mark said, "because you threw our daughter out with nowhere to go. She went to your house." "That is not the point." "It seems very much the point." Lauren's mouth tightened. "You humiliated me." "No," I said. "I held you accountable." Patricia stepped forward, and this time I moved back only enough to keep the doorway from becoming a physical confrontation. She took that as permission and entered. Mark followed. Lauren came last. The moment Patricia stepped into the living room, her eyes landed on the photographs spread across the coffee table. She sighed. "This again." I closed the front door slowly. "Careful, Patricia." She turned to me. "You are destroying your son's marriage over old photographs." "No," I said. "Lauren damaged this family when she decided my memories were obstacles." Mark crossed his arms. "Daniel is half owner of this house morally, whether your lawyer likes it or not." "Morally?" I asked. "Did morality tell Lauren to call a realtor?" Patricia glanced at Lauren. Lauren looked away. Mark's face hardened. "A young family has needs. You're sitting on a valuable property." "There it is again," I said. "Property, value, needs. None of you have said respect." Patricia's voice sharpened. "Respect goes both ways. Lauren has tried for months to make this place livable." Livable for whom? For everyone. No, I said. For herself. Lauren snapped. Because you made it impossible for me to feel at home here. I looked around the room. You were welcome here. That was not enough for you. You wanted ownership. Patricia pointed at me. You are an old woman alone in a house too large for you. Daniel and Lauren have a child. Any decent mother would want to help. I felt the insult, but I did not absorb it. A decent mother does not have to surrender her home to prove love. Mark stepped closer. You better think carefully before you keep this up. People in this town know us. They know Lauren. They know what kind of mother she is. I understood then. This was not a conversation. It was pressure. What exactly are you threatening? I asked. Mark smiled without warmth. No threat, just truth. Folks at church might be interested to hear how Maria Griffin kicked out her daughter-in-law and upset her own granddaughter over a box of pictures. Lauren looked down, but she did not stop him. Patricia added, and if you think a judge would look kindly on a grandmother creating instability for a child, you may be surprised. I walked to the side table and picked up my phone. Lauren's eyes narrowed. Who are you calling Robert? Patricia laughed. Of course. I dialed anyway. Robert answered quickly. Maria Lauren is here with her parents. They are threatening to smear me publicly and suggesting legal action. His voice changed at once. Do not discuss anything further. I'm 10 minutes away. I ended the call. Mark shook his head. You really do hide behind that lawyer. No, I said. I stand beside people who understand boundaries. The next 10 minutes felt much longer. Lauren went upstairs to collect more clothes while Patricia watched me like I was something distasteful. Mark paced near the mantel, glancing at the photographs, the walls, the furniture as if mentally pricing everything. When Robert arrived, he did not come alone. He brought a folder thicker than the one from the day before. Good afternoon, he said, stepping inside. I understand there are concerns. Patricia lifted her chin. We are here because this woman has treated our daughter disgracefully. Robert looked at me. Maria, I nodded. They said they may tell people I threw Lauren out unfairly. They mentioned court. Robert turned to Patricia and Mark. Then let me be very clear. Maria Griffin is the sole owner of this home. Lauren was a guest. Her permission to remain has been withdrawn. Mark scoffed. You said that already. Robert opened the folder. I also have copies of text messages Maria provided from Daniel's phone this morning. Lauren came down the stairs at that exact moment. Her face changed. What texts? Robert looked at her. Messages between you and Carter Bloom, the realtor. Messages discussing how to convince Maria that the house was too much for her. Messages referring to her as the obstacle. Patricia looked at Lauren sharply. Lauren's voice rose. Daniel gave you my private messages. Daniel gave Maria messages from his own phone, Robert said, including the one where you wrote, Once we get Maria out of the way, we can finally breathe. The room went silent. Mark's confidence faltered. I looked at Lauren. Out of the way, she swallowed. That was taken out of context. Robert continued. There are also messages indicating you entered Maria's private bedroom and removed personal items without permission. Patricia's face tightened. Lauren snapped. I was cleaning. No, I said. You were erasing. Robert closed the folder. If this harassment continues, Maria has options. Formal notice, police documentation, a civil claim for damaged property, and if necessary, a protective order. Mark's face reddened. Are you threatening my family? Robert's voice stayed even. I am explaining consequences. For the first time, Patricia looked uncertain. Lauren looked at me with pure hatred. You would do that to Emma's mother? I would do what is necessary to protect my home, my peace, and my granddaughter from being used as a weapon. Her eyes filled. but there was no softness in them. Patricia grabbed Lauren's arm. "Get your things." Lauren jerked away. "Mom, now." That was when I knew Patricia believed the messages. Not enough to apologize, but enough to retreat. Lauren stormed upstairs again. Mark muttered under his breath, but he no longer threatened me. Patricia stood stiffly near the door, avoiding my eyes. When Lauren came back down with 2 bags, she paused in the living room. Her gaze fell on the coffee table, on Thomas's photographs, then on me. "You think you won?" she said. I shook my head. "No one wins when a family reaches this point." She laughed bitterly. "Keep telling yourself that." Robert stepped slightly between us. "Lauren, it is time to leave." Patricia opened the door. Mark walked out first. Patricia followed. Lauren lingered 1 second longer. From upstairs, Emma's bedroom door creaked. Lauren looked toward the sound. "Emma." I lifted my hand. "Not now." Her eyes flashed. "She is my daughter." "Yes," I said, "and she is not your shield." Lauren's mouth trembled with rage. Then she walked out. This time, when the door closed, I locked it. Robert stood beside me in the quiet hallway. "You handled that well," he said. I looked at the lock, then at the stairs, then at the living room full of wounded memories. "No," I whispered. "I handled it late." Upstairs, Emma called softly, "Grandma." I turned toward her voice. And I knew the next battle would not be with Lauren. It would be helping a little girl understand that love should never require her to choose which adult she was allowed to remember. Daniel came back alone 2 days later. I saw him from the kitchen window before he knocked. He parked at the curb instead of the driveway, as if he no longer felt he had the right to pull close to the house. He sat in his car for several minutes with both hands on the steering wheel, staring forward. I watched him, my heart aching in that complicated way only a mother's heart can ache. Part of me wanted to open the door before he reached it. Another part of me remembered Thomas's photographs in the trash. So I waited. When the knock finally came, it was soft. I opened the door. Daniel stood on the porch wearing the same navy jacket he used to wear to work. But he looked nothing like the confident man who had once walked into my kitchen and told me Lauren was just trying to help. His face was tired. His eyes were swollen. He had not shaved. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Hello, Daniel." He swallowed. "Can I come in?" I looked at him for a moment, then stepped aside. He entered, slowly glancing around the hallway as if seeing the house for the first time after a long absence. His eyes moved to the living room where Thomas's workshop photograph had been returned to the bookshelf. The cracked wedding photo was not on display yet. I had placed it carefully in a drawer until I could have the glass replaced. Daniel noticed the empty space on the mantel where it would eventually go. "I'm not here to ask to move back," he said quickly. I closed the door. "Then why are you here?" He looked down. To tell the truth, those words were a beginning. Not forgiveness, but a beginning. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Robert had laid out the deed. The same table where Lauren's lies had finally started collapsing. I poured Daniel coffee, not because everything was normal, but because some habits are older than pain. He wrapped both hands around the mug. "Lauren is still at her parents' house," he said. "Emma stayed with me last night at the hotel. How is she confused?" His voice broke. "Trying to be brave. She should not have to be brave." "I know." He stared into his coffee for a long time. Then he said, "Lauren and I have been in trouble for longer than I admitted." I did not interrupt. "At first, I thought it was normal stress," he continued. "Bills, work, parenting, all of it. Lauren always wanted more. A better car, better furniture, better vacations, better school district, better everything. And every time I said we should slow down, she made me feel small." He gave a bitter little laugh. "She'd say, 'Your father built a whole life with his hands. What exactly are you building, Daniel?' The cruelty of it made my stomach tighten. 'She used Thomas against you.'" He nodded. "All the time. Not in front of you, but at home in private. She'd say I was living in a dead man's shadow. She'd say you still treated Dad like the man of the house because I had never become one." I closed my eyes. There it was again. Lauren had not simply attacked me. She had found Daniel's deepest insecurity and fed it until it grew teeth. "That does not excuse what you allowed," I said. "I know." He looked at me quickly. "I know it doesn't. I'm not here to blame her for everything." "Good." He breathed in shakily. "Because some of it was me." That was the first honest sentence I had heard from him in months. I was ashamed, he said. When the investment failed, I panicked. I had taken money from our savings. Then we used credit cards to cover bills. Then Lauren signed up for that business coaching program because she said it would help her build a consulting brand. It cost more than she told me. How much more? He winced. Almost 18,000. I pressed my lips together. And the rental property, a group investment. Lauren's friend knew someone. I should have checked everything. I didn't. I wanted one win. Just one. I wanted to feel like I was moving my family forward. And when it failed, Lauren said we needed a bigger solution. The house. He nodded. I looked toward the living room, toward the shelves Thomas had built. Daniel's voice dropped. At first I told her no. I said you would never sell. Then she said maybe you would if we made it feel less painful to leave. My skin went cold. Less painful, I repeated. She said the house kept you trapped. She said if we updated it, removed some of Dad's things, made it feel less like him, maybe you would see it as property instead of a shrine. I stared at my son, and you agreed. His eyes filled. Not out loud, but I didn't stop her. That is agreement, Daniel. I know. The room was quiet except for the ticking clock. He wiped his face. The night she threw away the pictures, I knew she was upset. I knew she went downstairs. I didn't know she took the letters, but I knew she had crossed a line before she even came back to bed. And you said nothing. I was tired. I did not soften. He looked at me. That sounds pathetic, doesn't it? It sounds true. And ugly. He nodded, accepting it. I told myself I was keeping peace, he said. But I was really avoiding consequences. If I challenged Lauren, she would explode. If I defended you, she would say I was still a little boy choosing his mother over his wife. If I admitted the debt, I would have to face what I had done. So you let me face it instead. His face crumpled. Yes. The word hurt, but it also mattered, because lies keep wounds infected. Truth, even painful truth, lets air in. I looked at him across the table. Your father would have been disappointed. Daniel closed his eyes as if I had struck him. But I continued, he would not have stopped loving you. A sob broke from him then. He covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking. I sat still, tears in my own eyes. When he finally lowered his hands, he looked younger than I had seen him in years. I miss him, he whispered. I know. I hated missing him here because everyone expected me to be him. No one expected that from you. I did, he said. Every time I couldn't fix something. Every time Emma asked about him. Every time Lauren looked at me like I was weak. I thought Dad would have known what to do. I reached across the table and touched his hand. Your father was not born knowing what to do. He made mistakes too. He learned by taking responsibility for them. Daniel looked at my hand on his. I want to do that, he said. I don't know if Lauren and I can fix our marriage. I don't even know if we should. But I called a financial counselor this morning. I'm going to meet with them next week. I also called Carter Bloom and told him never to contact me or Lauren about this house again. I nodded slowly. That is something. I'm going to apologize to Emma, too. Properly. Not blame anyone. Not confuse her. Good. And Mom? His voice shook again. I am sorry I made you feel unsafe in your own home. That apology reached a place the others had not, because it named the wound. I looked toward the living room where Emma's small saved photograph now sat temporarily on the side table waiting for a frame. I believed letting you stay here was protecting my family, I said. But I forgot that protection without boundaries can become surrender. Daniel nodded. I cannot let you move back in right now. I know, and I cannot promise I will trust you quickly. I know that too. But I want you to become someone Emma can trust. Someone I can trust. Someone your father would recognize. He wiped his eyes. I want that too. For the first time in days, I believed him. Not completely, not blindly, but enough to let hope sit quietly in the room with us. Before he left, Daniel stood in the living room and looked at Thomas's workshop photograph. I used to hate that picture, he admitted. I stood beside him. Why? Because he looked so happy, so sure of himself. I never felt that way. I studied Thomas's face in the frame. He wasn't always sure. He just kept showing up. Daniel nodded. Then he whispered, I'm sorry, Dad. The house was silent, but this time it did not feel sharp. It felt like it was listening again. Daniel left a few minutes later. He did not ask to stay. He did not ask for money. He did not ask me to speak to Lauren. He only hugged me at the door and said I'll do better. I held him for one brief moment. Then I let him go. Because forgiveness, like a house, cannot be rebuilt in a day. But sometimes, if the foundation is not completely destroyed, the first honest nail can still be driven back into place. The next morning, I called Susan Whitaker. Susan had lived next door for 27 years. She had brought casseroles when Thomas was sick, sat beside me at his funeral, and once climbed through my kitchen window with a spare key when I locked myself out in the rain. She was the kind of friend who did not ask if you needed help. She simply showed up with a plan. When I told her what had happened, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 15. She walked into my living room carrying a toolbox, a roll of paper towels, and a face full of righteous fury. Where are the photographs? She asked. I pointed to the coffee table. Susan removed her coat, rolled up her sleeves, and looked at the damaged frames. All right, she said. We start with what can be saved. That was Susan. Practical love. Emma sat cross-legged on the rug, watching us carefully. She had asked to help, and I let her. Not with the broken glass, but with the safe things. She sorted photographs by size and placed clean tissues between them. Every few minutes, she would ask a question. Was Grandpa funny? Very. Did he like pancakes? He burned them every Saturday and called them crispy. Did he love Grandma's pie? Susan laughed. Honey, that man would have proposed all over again for one slice of your grandmother's apple pie. Emma smiled. And slowly, the house began to feel less like a battlefield and more like a home being stitched back together. Susan helped me take down the mirror Lauren had hung above the mantel. It was heavy and cold, reflecting everything but holding nothing. When we lifted it from the wall, I saw the faint outline where our family photograph had hung for years. My throat tightened. Susan noticed. You want a minute? I shook my head. No, I want it back. We found the old frame in the den closet wrapped in newspaper. The glass was dusty but unbroken. Inside was a photograph taken at Emma's first birthday party. Thomas was thin by then, already sick, though he had hidden it well. He sat in his chair with Emma on his knee, Daniel standing behind him, me beside them, with one hand on Thomas's shoulder. Lauren was not in that photograph. She had not entered our lives yet. I wondered if that was why she hated it. Susan wiped the glass clean. I held the frame while Emma watched from the sofa. "Can I help hang it?" Emma asked. "You can tell us if it's straight," Susan said. We lifted it onto the wall. Emma tilted her head with great seriousness. "A little left." Susan adjusted it. "A tiny bit right." I laughed for the first time in days. "You are a strict supervisor." Emma smiled. "Grandpa deserves straight." "Yes," I said softly. "He does." Next we returned Thomas's chair to the window. The gray chair Lauren had put there was moved to the den. Thomas's old chair was heavier than I remembered, or maybe grief had made me weaker. Susan pushed from one side, I pulled from the other, and together we set it where it belonged, facing the maple tree. For a moment, I could almost see him there, not in a frightening way, not as a ghost, more like memory settling into its rightful place. By noon, the living room looked like itself again. Not exactly as it had before Lauren. Some things were still missing. Some frames needed repair. Some photographs would always carry stains from the night they were thrown away. But the room breathed. The bookshelf held Thomas's workshop picture. The mantel held the family photo. The carved cross was back near the lamp. The quilt from Thomas's mother was folded over the back of the sofa, soft and worn and beautiful. Susan stood with her hands on her hips. "Now this looks like Maria Griffin's house." Emma looked up. "And Grandpa Thomas's?" I smiled. "Yes, and Grandpa Thomas's memory." Susan left in the early afternoon after making me promise to eat something. Emma went upstairs to draw a picture for Daniel. I stayed in the living room alone, holding the cracked wedding photograph. I had decided to take it to a frame shop the next day. The crack across Thomas's face still hurt to see, but part of me wondered if I should keep the glass. Not because I wanted the damage, but because it told the truth. Love survives cracks. It does not pretend they never happened. Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I looked through the front window. Lauren stood on the porch, alone. My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My hand closed around the edge of the curtain. She wore a dark coat and held no suitcase this time. Her face looked pale, but her eyes were sharp. I opened the door, only halfway. "What do you want, Lauren?" She looked past me into the house. Her eyes found the restored mantel, the returned photograph, Thomas's chair by the window. Her mouth tightened. "I came to talk." "You can talk from there." She gave a small, wounded laugh. "So now I'm not even allowed inside, no?" Her expression hardened. "Maria, this has gone too far." "I agree." "Then let me come in." "No." She looked toward the stairs, though she could not see Emma from the porch. "Is my daughter here?" "She is upstairs. I want to see her." "You can arrange that with Daniel." "I am her mother." "Yes," I said. "And today, you are also the woman who tried to use her as a shield in my living room." Lauren's face flushed. I was upset. So was I. I did not pull Emma into the middle. She looked away, jaw tight. For one brief moment, I thought she might apologize. A real apology. Not one shaped like blame. Not one beginning with if. Just the simple, difficult sentence, "I was wrong." Instead, she said, "You have no idea what it feels like to be treated like an outsider." I looked at her carefully. You were not treated like an outsider when you came here. You became one when you tried to take what was not yours. Her eyes flashed. I wanted a future. At my expense. At everyone's expense, she snapped. Do you think I wanted debt? Do you think I wanted to live under my mother-in-law's roof? Do you think I wanted to feel like every corner of this house belonged to a dead man and never to me? There it was again. The resentment, the jealousy of a man who was not alive to defend himself. I kept my voice steady. Thomas did not take space from you. Your greed did. Lauren stepped closer. You act so righteous, but you liked having power. You liked watching Daniel depend on you? No, I said. I liked believing my son still trusted me. That quieted her for half a second. Then she looked past me again toward the living room. You put everything back? Yes, of course you did. I followed her gaze. This is my home. It could have been ours. No, Lauren, it could have been a place where you were welcomed. That is different. Her eyes glistened, but I still did not trust the tears. Daniel won't answer my calls. That is between you and Daniel. You turned him against me. No. Your choices showed him what he needed to see. She laughed bitterly. And what about Emma? Are you going to turn her against me too? Fill her head with stories about Grandpa Thomas until she thinks I'm the villain? I felt anger rise, but I held it. Emma is a child. She deserves truth without poison. I will not speak hatred into her heart. Lauren's voice lowered. But you'll let her choose you. I will let her love everyone she loves without being punished for it. That struck her. For a moment, Lauren's face shifted. Beneath the anger, I saw something almost like fear. Maybe she knew Emma had seen too much. Maybe she understood that control does not look like love once a child learns the difference. Then a small voice came from behind me. Grandma, I turned. Emma stood at the bottom of the stairs holding the drawing she had made. Her eyes moved from me to Lauren. Mommy Lauren's face softened instantly. Baby, come here. Emma took one step, then stopped. I did not touch her. I did not hold her back. Lauren noticed. Emma, she said, forcing a smile. Mommy just wants a hug. Emma looked at me. I said gently, You can decide, sweetheart. Lauren's eyes snapped to me furious. But Emma walked slowly to the door. She did not run into Lauren's arms the way she normally might have. She stood beside me, small and uncertain. Are you still mad? Emma asked. Lauren crouched. I'm sad because Grandma made Mommy leave. I saw Emma's face change, not confusion this time. Recognition. Grandma said grown-ups are responsible for their own choices, Emma said. Lauren froze. I closed my eyes briefly. Out of all the things I had told Emma, that was what she had carried. Lauren's smile trembled. Yes. Well, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Emma looked at her. Then you should say sorry. The porch went silent. Lauren stared at her daughter. I did too. Children can speak truth with a simplicity that strips away every excuse. Lauren's mouth opened, but no apology came. Instead, she stood. I'll call your father, she said. Emma looked down. Lauren turned to me, her face hard again. This isn't over. No, I said. But this door is closed. Then I shut it. Not slammed, closed, locked. Emma stood beside me silent. After a moment, she whispered, Was that mean I knelt carefully in front of her? No, sweetheart. That was a boundary. She looked toward the door. Do boundaries hurt? Sometimes. Do they mean you don't love someone? I touched her cheek. No. Sometimes boundaries are how we keep love from becoming damage. Emma leaned into me, and I held her as the late afternoon light filled the hallway. Behind us, Thomas's photograph watched over the living room again. And for the first time in many days, I did not feel like I was defending the past. I felt like I was protecting the future. Peace did not return all at once. It came slowly in small, ordinary moments that felt almost too fragile to trust. It came the first Saturday morning. Emma stayed with me after Lauren left. She padded into the kitchen in her socks, climbed onto the chair by the window, and asked if we could make Grandpa Thomas's crispy pancakes. I laughed so hard I had to hold the counter. They were only crispy because he burned them, I said. Emma smiled. Then we should burn one for him. So we did. One pancake, darker than it should have been, sat on a little plate near the center of the table. Emma insisted it was for memory, not eating. I did not correct her. Some rituals begin that way from a child's pure heart, and they become sacred before anyone realizes it. Daniel came by that afternoon. He did not use his old key. He knocked. That mattered to me. When I opened the door, he stood on the porch holding a small paper bag from the frame shop downtown. His eyes moved carefully over my face, as if asking permission before he even spoke. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Daniel." He lifted the bag. I had the wedding photo repaired. New glass, same frame. They couldn't remove every stain from the picture, but they cleaned what they could. For a moment, I could not answer. He handed it to me with both hands. Inside was the photograph of Thomas and me on our wedding day. The crack was gone. The image was still slightly marked near the bottom, but Thomas's face was whole again. My fingers trembled. "Thank you," I whispered. Daniel nodded, his eyes wet. I should have protected it before it needed repairing. That was the difference now. He was not making excuses. He was naming the wound. Emma ran down the hallway when she heard his voice. "Daddy." Daniel knelt and opened his arms. She hugged him tightly, but I noticed she looked back at me once, checking that it was safe to love him. That nearly broke my heart. Children should never have to ask permission from a room before loving their parents. Daniel noticed, too. His face changed, and he held her more gently. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. "I'm sorry things have been scary." Emma leaned back. "Are you still sad?" "Yes," he said, "but I'm working on being honest." She nodded seriously. "Grandma says that's important. She's right." Over the next few weeks, Daniel began doing what he had promised. Not perfectly, but consistently. He met with a financial counselor. He showed me the appointment confirmation, not because I asked, but because he wanted me to know he was no longer hiding. He closed 2 credit cards. He made a payment plan. He admitted the rental investment loss without blaming Lauren, though I knew the story was tangled. He also started therapy. That surprised me most. "My counselor says I avoid conflict because I confuse peace with silence," he told me one evening. I looked at him over my tea. "Your counselor sounds wise." He gave a tired smile. "She also says I need to stop measuring myself against Dad." I glanced toward Thomas's photograph. "Your father would agree." Daniel looked at the picture for a long time. I wish I had asked him more questions. "So ask them now?" I said. His brow furrowed. "Ask me," I continued. "Ask Susan. Ask Robert. Ask the people who knew him. Remembering him does not have to make you smaller." That became another small ritual. On Sunday afternoons, Daniel and Emma came over for dinner. Not every Sunday, but often enough that the house began to recognize their footsteps again. After we ate, Daniel would ask one question about Thomas. What was Dad afraid of? Did Dad ever fail at something big? Did Dad ever feel like he wasn't enough? And I answered honestly, Yes, Thomas had been afraid when Daniel was born. Yes, he once lost nearly all our savings trying to start a custom cabinet business too soon. Yes, he sometimes felt like he was failing me when money was tight. Daniel listened like a man drinking water after years of thirst. The more human Thomas became to him, the less haunted Daniel looked. As for Lauren, she and Daniel separated. Not with screaming, at least not in my house. Daniel told me they were living apart while deciding what came next. Lauren still called. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she blamed. Sometimes, according to Daniel, she apologized and then took it back in the same breath. I did not interfere. That was another boundary I had to learn. A mother's love can become a rope if she throws it into every storm her child creates. I could support Daniel without climbing into the wreckage of his marriage and pretending I could rebuild it for him. Emma stayed with me many weekends. Her photograph of Thomas holding her as a baby sat on her nightstand. Sometimes she brought it downstairs and asked for stories. Sometimes she simply touched the frame and went back to coloring. One afternoon, she asked Grandma if Mommy says sorry one day, will Grandpa's pictures forgive her? I sat beside her on the rug. Pictures don't forgive, sweetheart. People do. Will you? I looked toward the mantel where the repaired wedding photograph now stood. I don't know yet, I said. Forgiveness is not pretending something didn't hurt. Sometimes it takes time. Emma nodded. But the pictures can stay. Yes, I said. The pictures can stay. Months passed. The maple tree turned gold, then bare. Winter came quietly dusting the porch railings Thomas had built with snow. The house felt different now. Not frozen in the past as Lauren had accused. Not trapped. Alive. Because memories, when honored properly, do not stop a home from growing. They give it roots. In January, I called Robert Hayes and asked him to help me create something new. Not a revenge document. Not a punishment. A future. I established the Thomas Griffin Family Education Fund for Emma. It was not enormous, but it was steady. A portion of my savings would go into it each year, and when the time came, it would help Emma with college trade school, or whatever path she chose. When I told Daniel, he cried. Mom, you don't have to do that. I know. After everything, I touched his hand. This is not for everything. This is for Emma and for your father. He looked toward the mantel. Dad would like that. Yes, I said. He believed in building things that lasted. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I want to contribute when I can. You may, I said, when your own foundation is steady. He smiled faintly. That sounds like something Dad would say. It is. By spring, the house had become mine again in a deeper way than before. Not because Lauren was gone. Because I had stopped asking permission to belong in my own life. I still missed Thomas every day. Some mornings, I reached across the bed before remembering. Some evenings, I turned to tell him something funny Emma had said, only to find the chair empty. But grief no longer felt like a room I was locked inside. It felt like a window I could open. One warm afternoon, Emma and I planted flowers beneath the maple tree. Daniel knelt beside us, getting soil on his jeans, laughing when Emma told him he was doing it wrong. For a moment, I saw past and future together. Thomas's tree above us, Daniel trying, Emma growing, me still here, still standing, still the owner of my home, my memories and my peace. Lauren had thrown away photographs because she thought they were only paper. But she was wrong. They were proof. Proof that love had lived here. Proof that I had been cherished. Proof that a woman does not become disposable just because she grows older, becomes widowed, or chooses silence for too long. And when I placed the last flower into the soil, I looked up at the house Thomas and I had built, and I finally understood something. I had not thrown Lauren out because she hated my past. I had thrown her out because she thought she could steal my future, and I was not done living in it. Sometimes the deepest disrespect does not arrive as shouting. Sometimes it arrives quietly disguised as concern, organization, or moving on. But no one has the right to erase the love that built you. No one has the right to treat your memories like clutter, your grief like weakness, or your home like something they can claim before you are finished living in it. Maria's story is not only about photographs. It is about dignity. It is about boundaries. It is about the painful moment when love must stop making excuses for people who keep causing harm. Family should never require you to disappear so someone else can feel powerful. True family honors where you came from, even while building what comes next. Grief is not a prison when it is held with love. Memories are not chains when they remind us of strength, loyalty, and the people who helped us survive. And forgiveness, if it comes, should never be forced by guilt. It should come with truth, accountability, and changed behavior. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to protect your peace from someone in your own family? Do you believe Maria did the right thing by making Lauren leave? I would love to hear your opinion. Please, like this video, subscribe for more emotional family stories, and comment where you are watching from and what time it is there. Your stories, your wisdom, and your presence mean more than you know.